Star Wars, Silver Oath. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126 Handover. Zazi said, the strongest fortresses often collapse from within, and human intelligence is the best corrosive agent. By the way, the reason why you can become the director of the general administration is because you don't have enough corrosive agents. Shut up. I have planted the seeds of corrosion in his heart, and Lee can provide the best soil for the seeds to take root and sprout. Let him escape for the time being, whether he wanders in District 9 or goes to Cheyenne District to recuperate. What he sees and hears here will surely refresh him. Thinking of the space city, where order and chaos are mixed, Ziyan couldn't help but have a headache, and it took him a long time to make a decision. I understand. Then I'll leave the matter of the Jedi apprentice to you. Leave it to me, brother. You don't think I can still play hide and seek with a Jedi apprentice after fighting him so many times, do you? Zazi said, coughing, and blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. Jedi Knights are all monsters. A little apprentice can fight me to a draw. My crazy blood has expired. For the next period of time, I can only be a quiet perverted murderer in the hospital. Let Ziyang do the work of catching the apprentice. I believe he can do a good job. After saying that, Zazi stopped talking to his brother, and he fell to the ground like a robot that ran out of power. The next moment, the black muzzle of the gun was against his forehead. Ziyang's face was gloomy, his eyelids trembled slightly, and only the hand holding the gun was as steady as a rock. He had no interest in catching any Jedi apprentice, and even less interest in participating in this unprovoked disaster. As long as he shot the culprit dead here. Only by shooting the culprit dead here can the space city be restored to peace. At the critical moment of life and death, Zazi laughed. Ziyang, stop pretending. Once you've been a coward, you'll be a coward for life. What you couldn't do back then, you can't do now. So don't dream of turning against the family. You're not suitable to play that kind of ruthless role. You'd better be a dog for the family and catch that apprentice. The muzzle of the gun did not waver. Zazi sighed, and his flat face showed an extremely impatient look. Why are there always so many idiots around me? Hasn't what happened back then taught you enough lessons? Ziyang was startled when he heard this. Zazi said, back then, I proposed to your superiors that you abandon your teammates and force you to betray all your friends. Later, I was in charge of cleaning up the remnants of the rebels and executed those who failed to escape in time, including your close friend. As a member of the Zaya family, you have fallen to this state, thanks to my activeness back then. Don't say you have forgotten. Almost at the moment, when the words fell, a beam of energy fell next to Zazi's head, and it was just a little bit away from piercing his forehead. Zazi's flat face did not even have a ripple. Yes, you also threatened me with a gun back then, and you deliberately missed the target, even though you could have hit me. However, you should not have forgotten the little gift I gave you that year, right? Little gift. At this moment, Ziyang's face suddenly changed, and the hand holding the gun finally began to tremble. Zazi raised the corner of his mouth slightly. Remember? Yes, it has a beautiful, Zinmupi packaging, brightly painted, and if you listen carefully, you can hear the sound of ticking. Each of your trusted subordinates will receive a copy, and many of them are signed by their families and friends. Shut up. Zazi certainly wouldn't shut up. I set the destination of the cargo ship to Lee, and specifically asked you to be responsible for the pickup. You shouldn't think that I didn't make any advance preparations, right? Half an hour later, if I can't lie down in the Nirvana medical cabin in Cheyenne District 2, each of your subordinates will receive my little gift at home. For example, the little guy named looming over there, his girlfriend should be waiting for you to finish the mission at number 422, Pingan Street, Cheyenne District 7, and spend the anniversary with her. If Zazi didn't finish his words, and the muzzle of the gun in front of him was finally taken back. That's right. From now on, my mission will be handed over to you. Do a good job, and don't let me down. After speaking, Xiaozi closed his eyes and his breathing became extremely slow. The little man standing behind Zhijiang gritted his teeth and said, "Captain, what should we do next?" Zhijiang sighed. "What else can we do? Contact Nirvana, prepare the medical cabin, and take him there as soon as possible. His vital signs are almost gone." The little man was still a little unbelievable. "Captain, is what he just said true? What does it matter whether it is true or not?" Zhijiang sighed again. "We don't have the right to choose not to believe it." The little man was still a little unwilling. "Captain, I can let my girlfriend stay away for a while. There is no need to." Luoming, this is an order. "Yes, Captain." Luoming immediately gathered all his thoughts and used the communicator to contact Nirvana, the most prestigious hospital in the entire space city, and asked it to quickly send out an emergency airship. But he didn't expect that Luoming would encounter obstacles at this step. "What do you mean there are no spare airships? Where are the emergency boats that are always on standby in your hangar? There are 10 of them. Don't tell me they are all occupied." "What? Leave them for VIPs? There are only a few VIPs in the space city, and they are all sick and waiting for you to rescue them." What do you mean the situation has not been settled and the airships cannot be moved? It was just a cargo ship crash. It wasn't a "but how" explosion, and it didn't crash into your house. Why are you pretending to be so stupid? Luoming was yelling halfway when the communicator was snatched away by Zhijiang. The captain in black armor had long been indifferent to the contempt on the other end of the communicator, so he simply stated his conditions. If the emergency boat cannot be in place within 5 minutes, Kyankan Security will withdraw from Sanki Street in Chiangsaen District 8 and announce the news to the whole city. I remember that your staff dormitory is on that street. I hope you can be self-reliant when facing the Wanderers in District 9. After that, Zhijiang took the initiative to cut off the communication and then sighed. "Wait a minute, the airship should be here soon." Luoming hesitated and said, "Captain, were you serious just now? Do you really want to withdraw from Sanki Street?" Zhijiang said, "What else? Continue to protect them and let them do whatever they want. It would be okay for us to lose face, but if someone really sends a small gift to our door, it would be too late to regret it." Thinking of the small gift that Xiaozi mentioned, Luoming couldn't help but get nervous. "Captain, is the small gift he mentioned real? Do you dare to bet whether it is true or not?" Zhijiang smiled helplessly. "Although I hate the man on the ground, I have to admit that his method is indeed very effective." Luoming asked again, "What about the Jedi apprentice?" "Don't worry about it, and don't say anything. When the others come back later, just pretend you know nothing." Luoming was surprised, but Zhijiang waved her hand. "Don't ask. The less you know about this matter, the better. You are still young. There is no need to cut off your own retreat." Chapter 127 Chiangsaen 9 Districts. Luoming felt that the captain's words were becoming more and more confusing, but he also knew that what he should do now was to follow orders and not act on his own. So he left the scene very quickly, turned around and ran to the wreckage of the cargo ship and cooperated with other soldiers to carry the unconscious crew members in the giant camel one by one. Maybe it was good luck, or maybe someone had made enough efforts when the giant camel crashed, so that although dozens of crew members on the ship were injured, few were seriously injured, and no one died. Luoming couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw this. If the injuries were too serious, then only the Nirvana hospital in Chiangsaen District 2 in the space city could save them. But of course, how could that high-ranking hospital open its doors to this group of civilians? Now, the Yanshao Hall in Chiangsaen District 8, or the Husheng Hall in Chiangsaen District 7, these civilian hospitals should be enough. If it really doesn't work, the black doctors in Xianhuang District can also be regarded as good value for money, and it's nothing more than taking a little more risk. A moment later, a pure white airship roared in from a distance. The emergency airship from the top hospital, Nirvana, arrived at the scene within 5 minutes. However, this life-saving airship did not even look at the crew members who were groaning in pain next to the wreckage of the cargo ship. It landed directly on a small open space, showing its exquisite driving skills and airship performance. Two medical staff in full protective clothing walked down from the airship, drilled into the ruins, and wanted to lift Zai onto the suspension frame without saying a word during the whole process. Zai sighed and followed. Although in theory, as long as the emergency airship of Nirvana picked up the person's life would be saved. But considering Zai's secrets and the wide range of his life involved, Zai had to accompany him in person to ensure that he could indeed lie in the medical cabin in the remaining 25 minutes. However, after only 2 steps, a fully armed hospital security guard on the emergency airship pointed his gun at Zai and signaled him to stop. Although Nirvana was located in this space city, it had its own private army. Their training and equipment were much better than those of Kyankan security. They did not need Kyankan security's protection, and were not subject to control. At this time, Zai's attitude was considered an act of usurpation by the people of Nirvana. Zai said nothing more. He gently stroked his waist with his right hand, and pulled the trigger of his pistol. His movements seemed gentle, but they were actually extremely fast. The pistol on his waist did not disappoint him either. The energy beam accurately knocked the long gun out of the opponent's hand, and the gunman did not even react. Zai stunned the scene with his exquisite rapid shooting, and then strode into the airship. No one dared to stop him. However, after sitting down on the airship, Zai reached out to touch the pistol at his waist, and the face of the Jedi apprentice and his even better rapid fire kept appearing in his mind. TSK, it shouldn't be that coincidental. The night in Shiangsuan District 9 is as dark as ink. As a new expansion area of Shiangsuan District, its location is not ideal. Above it is the famous Grand Theater of Space City and the defense network guarding it, as if wearing a felt hat that can never be taken off. Around it is the Shiangsuan District that has been expanded for many years, and has already occupied all the good positions. Behind it is the Great Central Axis, that runs through the upper and lower districts of Li, like a giant beast covering the sky and the sun. All of this isolates the light from the star, Kyan, making Shiangsuan District 9 a natural place of eternal night. However, when District 9 was once prosperous, the inexhaustible energy from Bérgamo would be transformed into blazing light through countless lamps, bringing clear day and night here. The lights on the ground will light up the night, making this Shiangsuan new district glow with infinite vitality. Of course, with the decline of District 9, the former glory naturally faded, and the traces of prosperity left on this land seemed ironic. Walking in the ruins of the decaying District 9, Sin had a sarcastic smile on his lips, but he was laughing at himself. He was careless for a moment, and felt at this point. This is what he sowed. If he had not been so impulsive at the time, but stayed honestly in the base of the Red Apricot squad, and discussed countermeasures with his teammates, even if the result might not be satisfactory, he would not have fallen to the point of being covered in wounds, and hiding in the enemy's territory. But Sin did not have any regrets. Under the conditions at the time, his choice was not wrong. Kyankan security actually buried the trap directly under Bain's nose, which was something no one could have expected. So instead of wasting time regretting it, it is better to consider what to do next. Yeah, what should we do next? As he murmured, he saw airships roaring overhead, adding a lot of noise to the decaying and silent Shiangsuan District 9. Most of them were civilian airships from surrounding districts, including gangs that came to fish in troubled waters, journalists eager to collect first-hand information, and onlookers who were just watching the excitement. But soon, these airships were forced back by energy beams from security fighters scattered on the streets of District 9. The figures of several emergency airships mixed in among them made Sin feel relieved. Most of the people on the giant camel cargo ship were safe. But Sin quickly gathered his mind. He really didn't have the energy to care about others now. His situation was probably much worse than any other crew member. When the cargo ship crashed, Sin was at the bow and bore the strongest impact. Not only were his internal organs injured, but many fragments of the shattered bridge were still on his body. After that, Sin was ambushed by Zazi. Before he could even recover from his wounds, let alone bandage them, he had to fight a fierce battle that shook his mind. After the battle, Sin was ambushed by Kyankan security again, and was almost killed on the spot. At this time, the gunshot wounds in his shoulders and thighs continued to cause dizziness and severe pain. With every step, his body seemed to become heavier. This is what is called running out of oil and running out of lamps. In a trance, Scene suddenly heard footsteps not far away, accompanied by a burst of greedy laughter and scolding. Damn, is this true? As long as we can catch that guy, we will get 2 million Kyankan coins? Where did this big shot come from? It's so valuable? It's absolutely true. Brother Hutao said it himself, how could it be false? And no matter whether it's true or not, the worst that can happen is a wasted trip. What loss can there be? What nonsense are you talking about? Aren't you afraid that the one who is rewarded is the murderous gang of Bayan, and he will be shot to death? A 2 million reward, it's worth it, even if I get shot to death. Chapter 128 in the ruins. The noise made Scene gasp. The dragnid came so fast. In just a few minutes, all kinds of people were mobilized. Moreover, 2 million. He is really worth a lot. If he surrenders now, he can not only pay off Li Yu's debt, but also make $1 million. However, the Jedi apprentice would not fall into the trap. He identified the direction of the sound, slowed down his pace and gently avoided it. In the deep night, his figure seemed to melt into the darkness, and no one paid attention to him. But Scene did not dare to relax at all. In this darkness, there were countless pairs of malicious eyes watching him. Thinking of the black armored squadron leader who had attacked with a jetpack not long ago, Scene felt even more like a thorn in his side. After a while, there was a noisy sound of footsteps in front of him. Turning around the corner, and more than a dozen beams of light from flashlights swayed around, reflecting strange and bizarre ghosts in the ruins. This almost collided head-on with Scene. The Jedi apprentice had no time to lament that his 5 senses were dulled due to his serious injuries. He immediately turned over and entered an abandoned house next to him, just in time to avoid a sudden beam of light. A moment later, 2 people walked into the house with loose steps and casually scanned the living room with a flashlight. Seeing that the floor was covered with dust and there was not even a footprint, they turned away in disappointment, leaving behind a string of complaints. Waking people up in the middle of the night to arrest someone. Boss Zeduo really knows how to order people around. Be content, at least we are going to be paid this time. As long as we sweep a few streets nearby, each of us can get an extra 100 or 200 yuan. Oh, Liu, you're naive. You're satisfied with 100 or 200 yuan. Do you know how much reward the higher-ups promised to give to the boss? A full million yuan. Even if the person is not caught, there will be 100,000 yuan for providing clues. Damn, no wonder he is willing to spend thousands of yuan to let the brothers run errands. This is a sure win. It was not until the conversation faded away that Scene rolled over from the ceiling and landed on the ground. The fingers that had been tightly clasped in the cracks of the bricks were slightly numb. Fortunately, the 2 low-level gang members were just temporary strong men who had no professionalism at all. They didn't even raise their flashlights, otherwise Scene would be in great danger. After landing, Scene couldn't help but curl his lips and wanted to laugh. How come the 2 million yuan reward shrunk by half in the blink of an eye? Although the gangs in Xiangsu and District 9 are in decline, from the perspective of the layers of exploitation, one can really see some of their former glory. Unfortunately, the injuries on his shoulders and thighs soon stopped Scene from laughing. After avoiding this group of people, Scene felt that his strength was rapidly fading away. He knew that he could not hold on for much longer. The best option at the moment is to go to Xiangsu and District 8 or District 7, which is one of the most densely populated civilian settlements in the space city, where most of the permanent residents of Xiangsu and District are settled, and the corresponding supporting facilities are also the most complete. It is very convenient for recuperation and intelligence collection, and you can even find an opportunity to sneak out of the space city. However, Scene took a deep breath and swept away all the distracting thoughts in his mind. The plan is beautiful, but it is not realistic at all. Now even the streets of District 9 are full of people from all walks of life, so the passages to Districts 7 and 8 must be even more heavily guarded. I'm afraid that the 2 million reward was not issued temporarily. Judging from the Jedi apprentice's understanding of Zazi, perhaps he had prepared multiple plans as early as when he was in Zun, just like a set of serial traps. Scene was in it, and no matter how hard he struggled, he would only get deeper. A moment later, as Scene quietly climbed up a high-rise building, the scene in front of him directly verified his guess. From a high altitude, the main roads to Districts 7 and 8 had been completely blocked. In addition to the people from Kyankan security, there were also some mercenaries who were also fully armed, but obviously not affiliated with Kyankan security. What's worse is that more and more people, attracted by the high bounty, gathered from all directions to District 9, weaving a denser and denser net for the search. Scene only poked his head out to look around, and immediately retracted cautiously. At the moment he looked over, he vaguely felt that someone was about to sweep his eyes over. The high-rise building he was in had a good view, but it was also easy to become the focus of anti-reconnaissance. And among the people who came to arrest him this time, there were obviously many masters. Scene's heart gradually sank. At the same time Scene ducked his head, several patrolling gangs nearby received instructions and turned around to surround the building. In a few minutes, more than 100 armed gangs arrived at the scene and surrounded the high-rise building. They blocked every street around, and then a large group of people rushed into the high-rise building and began to search every corner. The scene was noisy and messy. From time to time, gangs from different factions would fight each other because of a disagreement and even shoot. However, the large-scale armed conflict did not break out in time. With the arrival of a small security soldier at the scene, the chaos was immediately quelled. A bruised and swollen man was holding up a steel pipe in his hand, ready to take revenge. But when he saw the short soldier, he immediately stopped and said hesitantly, "Luo, boss Luo." The short soldier snorted coldly, "There is no boss Luo here. I'm Luoming, the deputy captain of the Kyankan Security, Lee Squadron." Not far away, a man with a knife smiled flatteringly, "Yes, Captain Luo." Luoming glanced at him. "Zio Zeduo's people are here too? I thought he had retired completely." "Boss Zeduo has indeed retired, but I heard that this time it was your call, so of course." Luoming waved his hand. "Don't talk nonsense, let your people come down. There is no need to waste time looking for them upstairs. They have already run away." "Yes." The man with the knife did not hesitate at all and immediately called back all his companions upstairs with the communicator. None of these gang members who were hanging around in the deserted area dared to disobey the short soldier in front of them. Before Luoming was recruited into Kyankan security, he was the undisputed king of Xiangsu and District 9. Even District 7, District 8, and even Xianhuang District were famous for his reputation. Although he had quit the gang, his reputation was still fierce. It was better to offend the captain with a higher status than to provoke the vice captain who was not very prominent. This was the consensus of all gangs in Xiangsu and District. But Luoming had no intention of showing off his past reputation in front of his former subordinates. After scanning the scene, his attention came to the sewage pipe. He took 2 steps forward and knocked on the thick metal outer wall. After listening to the echo and thinking for a moment, he asked, "Has anyone checked the sewer?" Everyone looked at each other. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 Dream. Luoming couldn't help but frown at the slowness of the gang members. "Why don't you go quickly?" The gang members immediately dispersed at the same time. Not long after, someone shouted in a muffled voice underground, "We found his trace. Chase." Luoming gave instructions and then added, "Don't remove the encirclement on the ground, just in case." After speaking, Luoming simply sat down at the front desk of the first floor lobby, completely ignoring the dust on the table. The little man was motionless like a stone sculpture, waiting for the people sent in various directions to report the news. However, half an hour later, all the news was bad news. "Mr. Luo, Captain Luo, we are incompetent, and we really can't find any trace of that man. We have tried our best to search the sewers, but you also know that the sewers in District 9 are a famous maze in the entire space city. Even if we have several times more people, we can't. There is no movement on the ground. I guarantee it with my life." Listening to the responses from everyone, Luoming's expression became more and more gloomy, which made the gang members more and more nervous. although he is now wearing the uniform of Kyankan security and seems to have restrained his temper after being incorporated, but the stories he left behind during his gang period are too terrifying. Fortunately, looming did not explode in the end, but Sidon stood up. Forget it. Can you escape for a while? Withdraw the people to avoid giving them trouble. After speaking, looming quickly left the high-rise building. The remaining people were relieved. When their eyes met, they couldn't help but feel a kind of empathy for each other, and the original hostility disappeared. Without hostility, people from different gangs started chatting subconsciously. Who exactly is Boss Luo looking for? How long has it been since District 9 made such a big fuss? The last time was when Boss Luo confronted the people from the upper district of Shiangsuan district, right? Yes, the entire District 9, and even people from Districts 7 and 8 came. Boss Luo is really impressive. But we obviously won at that time. I don't know why Boss Luo later joined Kyankan Security and only served as a deputy. Besides, I heard that Kyankan Security is quite poor here. The captain of the squadron is basically poor except for his black armor. Boss Luo used to be a spendthrift, but he followed such a poor captain. I think he hasn't changed his gun for several months. Come to think of it, since Kyankan Security is so poor, why did they suddenly offer a reward of 1 million for just one person? Wait, 1 million? Isn't it 2 million? What do you mean 1 million or 2 million? I heard from Brother Fang that you can get a reward of 5 million for capturing that person alive. The topic was scattered from then on, and the gang members who had been hard to gather together immediately collapsed. In the noise, no one noticed that a grey-robed gang member who was guarding the hall quietly slipped out. He walked slowly along the deserted street with a casual pace, and from time to time he waved and greeted the gang members who passed by, and laughed foolishly. Such vagrants are common near high-rise buildings. Without looming's unified command, these mobs are naturally like this. The $1 million reward can only stimulate for a while, and it can't beat the natural inertia. So even if no one ordered to disband, more and more people chose to yawn and go home to sleep. Even the guards who were asked to block the street became sparse. The grey-robed gang members quickly found a gap and strolled past. It was not until he disappeared from everyone's sight that they suddenly quickened their pace. Seen, wearing a grey robe, quickly moved away from the high-rise building. He had never expected to be locked in and surrounded so quickly, as if the tall building was a trap from the beginning. Fortunately, he responded appropriately. On the one hand, he deliberately left bait in the sewer, and on the other hand, he put on a grey robe collected from a ruin, hunched over and disguised himself as an inconspicuous gang member, standing in front of everyone, and successfully concealed the truth. However, as looming said, you can escape for a while, but you can't escape forever. Walking on the dilapidated streets, Sin's mood did not relax at all. Although the gang members participating in the search in District 9 were just a mob, they had the advantage of being numerous. Even though many people went home, more people poured in from all over, so it was actually getting harder and harder to break free from this net. In addition, the entrances to Districts 7 and 8 were firmly guarded by Kyankan security and elite mercenaries, and there were no loopholes at all. Finally, with a serious injury, Sin stood in the hall for a long time, and his injuries worsened. As he walked, the Jedi apprentice felt his body getting stiffer and heavier, and his vision became blurry. So, if we can't go to Area 7 or Area 8, where else can we go? He couldn't help but whisper to himself, because now he could only keep his mind clear by speaking his thoughts. But this clarity only lasted for a moment. Even if he used language to assist his thinking, he still felt that his head was too heavy to maintain logic. May the force be with me. While muttering, Sin continued to move forward, but he could no longer find the direction to move forward. The darkness in front seemed to be alive, crawling towards him, but he could not turn his head, let alone stop. In the end, when the darkness swallowed him, Sin could no longer sense his own existence. Sin seemed to have entered a dream about childhood. Sin has lived in the Jedi temple since he could remember, but this time, in his dream, he did not live in that holy place, but stood in a courtyard full of flowers. Whether it was the rendering of the dream or the embellishment of the flowers, Sin felt that everything in front of him was extremely bright and colorful, with warm colors in his heart. The courtyard was not very large, and Scene could clearly see the courtyard wall not far away through the flowers and trees around him. However, in this limited space, the scenery was exquisite and luxurious, and every blade of grass, every brick and tile was a treasure in the world. Strangely, there were many flowers and trees that Scene had never seen before, but he subconsciously knew their value. There was a pebble path in the flowers, leading to a brown pavilion. A person was sitting in the pavilion, waving at him. The person's back was against the sun, and his facial features were hidden in a halo, but the intimate gesture made Scene feel good about it, and it was difficult to raise his guard. Scene subconsciously took a step forward, but found that his steps were slow and naive, and his body could not keep a good balance, swaying from side to side. Obviously, in this childhood dream, he was just learning to walk. However, every time when Scene was about to fall, there was always a pair of gentle arms behind him to support him, allowing him to continue to move forward stubbornly. Scene wanted to look back, but found that he had walked into the pavilion, and came to the person who waved. The man seemed to say something, but Scene couldn't hear clearly, even though he was so close, so he had to tiptoe, and raise his head, trying to get closer to the man. However, the next moment, the man's appearance suddenly appeared clearly in his field of vision. A flat face was like a smooth slate, two slender eyes, and a tightly pursed mouth were like lines drawn by a brush. That was a face Scene would never forget. Seeing an old friend. Did you miss me? The next moment, Scene woke up from his dream. Chapter 130, Duty. Hey, are you awake? Great, I was right. Your physique is really amazing. Have you been transformed somewhere? When I first found you, I thought you would never wake up, but you only slept for 3 days. In a trance, Scene seemed to hear someone chattering in his ear. But even if you really have been transformed, you can't be so careless. After all, it's a flesh and blood body, not a robot, that can be replaced with spare parts at any time. Even if it is a robot, it's not a good thing to frequently replace components. Scene blinked, making his vision clear. He should be lying in a ruin. At least what he saw was hard to call a roof. It looked more like a cave, rough and hideous. But waking up is only the first step. You have many wounds on your body, and your internal organs are bleeding. I don't have all the medicine here. You can't survive if you don't be strong. Scene tried to take a deep breath, and felt a gust of cold air rushing into his lungs, making him feel a little stiff all over, but it was just stiffness. The previous external injuries had been cleverly treated and bandaged. But since you have overcome the most difficult level, I believe that with your vitality, the following problems will not be difficult for you. In short, you must have confidence in the future. Do you understand? I don't want to go through the trouble of saving a dead person. Scene tried to clench his fist, and the feedback from his arm made him realize that he was in an extremely weak state. He could hardly clench his fist. Forget it. I almost forgot that the most important thing for the wounded is to replenish their nutrition. I just got some food and cooked a pot of porridge. Have a bowl while it's hot. Scene didn't care about his weak body. As a Jedi apprentice, the force was still with him, and the courage to overcome all difficulties was also with him. He closed his eyes again, and let the familiar feeling return to him. The connection with the force was still the same as before, even closer than before. Oh, don't sleep. Even if you want to sleep, drink the porridge first. This thing is not good when it's cold. What you need most now is to replenish your nutrition. There was a constant noise in his ears, and at the same time, Scene felt a not so strong arm pulling him up from the bed and leaning on a pile of cushions. Although he was a little tired and sleepy, Scene opened his eyes again, and then saw a sloppy face with messy beard and hair, approaching with a sincere smile. Maybe it was a local homeless person, but compared to ordinary homeless people, this person seemed a little out of place. His face was sloppy but not dirty, just his hair and beard were not well groomed. Judging from his facial features and skin, he was already middle-aged, but his eyes were clear. His face was ruddy, and he looked full of energy. In addition, although he was wearing shabby clothes, he did not smell sour, and even his fingernails were carefully groomed, leaving no dirt. Even in this cave-like space, there were all kinds of shabby furniture and equipment from District 9, making this space look small but full. In Scene's opinion, he was more like an unkempt artist. The hot porridge held in the hands of this middle-aged man with an artistic temperament exuded an irresistible sweet aroma. Scene couldn't help but feel his stomach rumbling. The middle-aged man smiled and scooped the hot porridge with a spoon and brought it to Scene's mouth. Scene did not refuse the other party's kindness, but felt that it was delicious. The porridge actually contained shredded suka pork and a little taste of vegetables and dairy products. Plain porridge is easy to absorb, but has no nutrition. This is a nourishing porridge specially made for you. Drink as much as you can. Scene nodded and drank the whole bowl of porridge bit by bit with the spoon in the other person's hand. After that, the man washed the bowl and spoon in a dilapidated sink, carefully put them back in the closet, took out a new bowl and spoon, scooped a bowl of porridge for himself, and savored it carefully. Seeing Scene looking at him seriously, the middle-aged man smiled slightly. I know you haven't eaten enough, but you are still weak now, so you can't eat too much. Just bear with it for now. Scene shook his head and asked, why did you save me? The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment, put down the bowl of porridge, and asked back, I saw someone fall in front of me, so I rescued him. Do I need any special reason? Scene disagreed. Is this Chiangsaen District 9? Yes, Chiangsaen District 9, a place where good people don't live long. The middle-aged man said frankly, if someone else fell in front of me, I really wouldn't save him. After all, I always have to ensure my own safety first. Saving someone who shouldn't be saved can easily cost you your life. Then, why? Scene pondered for a moment and asked straight to the point, because of the reward. I don't know what the reward is, and I don't want to know. The middle-aged man said lightly, only those gang members who are blinded by interests will take the reward seriously. I saved you because you and I are in the same line of work. Scene couldn't help but widen his eyes. In the same line of work? Are you also a GD? Exclamation mark. The middle-aged man stretched out his two messy and thick eyebrows, pointed to a thick belt hanging on the wall, and said with a smile, you are a doctor too? Scene was startled, and then he suddenly realized that the thick belt was a special equipment he made for himself at the Red Apricot team's base. It not only has a certain self-defense function, but also has a large storage space inside. Inside the belt is a first aid ointment tailored for him by Zubo, and also a set of exquisite first aid surgical instruments. Scene considered that he was going to travel alone, so he made sufficient preparations. Fortunately, this belt has not been damaged after a series of fierce battles with Zazie, and it has become Scene's doctor's certificate. The middle-aged man said, of course, I know that besides being a doctor, you also do some other jobs part-time, but that doesn't matter to me. After all, I'm also working part-time as a homeless person, haha. After laughing for a while, the middle-aged man said, in short, as long as you are a doctor, it is worth my help. After all, if doctors don't save doctors, who else in the world will save doctors? Scene frowned, always feeling that the middle-aged man's frank words contained heavy bitterness, but before he could savor it carefully, he felt tired again. The middle-aged man said, okay, don't talk too much. After drinking the porridge, go to bed early. When you are more energetic, we can talk slowly. Scene nodded, slowly closed his eyes, and lay down on the bed. Before sleepiness completely fell, Scene asked, I haven't asked for your name yet. Wang Yi. I'm Scene. Thank you Mr. Wang Yi for saving my life. Don't be so polite. Saving the dying and the wounded is the doctor's duty. Chapter 131 Recovering. Thanks to Wang Yi's lofty consciousness and the GD apprentice's well-trained physique, Scene regained his mobility the next day after waking up, and successfully got out of bed and walked around. Although it was still a long way from recovery, and the two nearly penetrating gunshot wounds were still hurting, this was undoubtedly a very good sign. Being in danger, Scene only hoped that he could recover as soon as possible. Not only for himself, but more importantly for Wang Yi. This part-time homeless doctor had extremely superb medical skills, and with this medical skill, he successfully rescued the seriously injured Scene. But he himself was helpless in District 9, without anyone to accompany him, and lived alone in a rockery cave on the edge of District 9, living a secluded life. On weekdays, he occasionally went out to help people treat illnesses and injuries, or process some simple medicines to make a living. Such a lone man who was not affiliated with any gang. If people knew that he was harboring a prisoner with a sky-high reward, the fate would be self-evident. It was only a matter of time before SYN was discovered. Although Wang Yi's residence was hidden, it was still within the scope of Xiangsu and District 9. Those gang members had searched in District 9 for several days without any results, and they would come to him sooner or later. In fact, it was very unexpected that Wang Yi could hide himself for 3 days. In fact, SYN couldn't even understand Wang Yi's choice. Even if saving the dying and the wounded is the doctor's duty, would a doctor take such a big risk to save people? Judging from his daily conversation, although he was a little too talkative, he was undoubtedly a clear-headed and smart person, and it was impossible for him not to consider the interests clearly. However, SYN neither asked this question nor thought about it in detail. Because even if he thought about it in detail, it would only lead to some unwarranted suspicions, which would not help change the status quo. So SYN simply accepted Wang Yi's character setting frankly, admitting that the other party was a doctor with noble medical ethics, and that he could be saved by this person in desperate situations, all thanks to the guidance of the Force. What he had to do next was to recover as quickly as possible, leave, and not cause trouble to Wang Yi, and then wait for a chance in the future to repay the other party's life-saving grace. However, although SYN had made plans, he encountered a serious setback that night. When Wang Yi changed SYN's medicine, he said helplessly, "The medicine is gone." SYN was stunned when he heard it. "Gone?" Wang Yi said, "I didn't know the use of the ointment you brought at first, and I wasted a lot on insignificant minor wounds. When it came time to deal with the critical gunshot wound, it was not enough. And here, you can see that there is not much medicine in reserve." SYN hummed, indicating his understanding. Although it is not clear why this middle-aged man with superb medical skills has fallen to become a homeless person in District 9, it is obvious that Wang Yi, as a homeless person, cannot have too many medicines. Kyankan Group has strict control over medicines. All kinds of medicines circulated through illegal channels can be sold at sky-high prices. In a place like District 9 where order has been lost, hoarding expensive medicines is tantamount to asking for trouble. Even the ointment bandages that Wang Yi used to bandage SYN's gunshot wound were probably treasures that he used to save his life. In this case, SYN did not force more. He tried to move his shoulder and felt a tearing pain sweeping over him. But fortunately, it was still within the tolerance of a Jedi apprentice. However, before he tried to move his injured leg, Wang Yi slapped him on the head. "What are you doing? Are you looking for death?" SYN was shocked, but Wang Yi was somewhat helpless. "If the medicine is gone, I can find a way to replace it. If your life is gone, who can I find to replace it?" "But don't worry, I have lived here for 5 years. Nothing will happen, I think." "Okay, the wounded should follow the doctor's advice. Don't let my previous efforts go to waste." Wang Yi rarely spoke harshly, and then hurriedly left the cave. SYN stayed in the cave, feeling confused for a while. Indeed, his physical condition was far from good enough to move freely. Even if he left the cave, he might not be able to escape the net of District 9. But staying in the cave was like waiting for death. SYN didn't want to doubt the character of his savior, but he had to doubt whether such a small cave could really protect him. Moreover, he was very worried about what happened outside after sleeping for so long. How would his teammates in the Red Apricot team react when he left without saying goodbye? Well, now they were probably his former teammates. Would Li Yu follow the clues and then kill all the way to Li to collect the debt? I have to admit that SYN actually had a little expectation of Li Yu's debt collection at this time. Of course, the most important question was, how was the master? He left Zun after seeing the news about the master on TV, although now thinking about it, the news was very likely a bait released by the Kyankan Group, but after all, the master was definitely on the TV show. The situation in the Kyan Galaxy would inevitably change dramatically. While SYN was daydreaming, footsteps were heard outside the cave. SYN immediately became alert. With the keen perception of a Jedi apprentice, he almost instantly heard that the person coming was not Wang Yi, and he was not alone. The footsteps were mixed with the sound of guns and cross-belt buckles colliding, which made SYN's hair stand on end. He subconsciously reached for his waist, but his hand was empty. Then he remembered that the most trusted weapon of the Jedi Knight was no longer with him. Of course, even without a lightsaber, relying on the Force alone, the Jedi Knight can easily defeat ordinary humans, let alone a few armed gang members like miscellaneous soldiers. What made Scene alert was that not long after Wang Yi left, the gang members came to the door. Could it be? At this moment, the sound of the gang members talking came from outside the door again. I say, Dr. Wang's home is just ahead, so don't go there. The problem is that we've searched almost every corner of District 9, but we still can't find that guy. Maybe he ran away a long time ago. Who knows if he's really still in District 9? It's been 4 days. If he really stayed here, how could he not be found? So it comes back to the original question. Has anyone searched Dr. Wang's home in the past 4 days? I heard that Leo Zeduo sent people over, and Dr. Wang said he didn't see any seriously injured teenagers. But Leo Zeduo's people also said that they were talking through the door at the time, and no one went in. So that's why you want to raid Dr. Wang's home while he's not around. Bullshit. I just want to see who's going to raid his home. But if you break into someone's home while they're not around, you won't be able to tell what will happen. That's why I asked you to come along. Can we two make it clear? I don't want to be buried with you. If you offend Dr. Wang, where can you find such high quality and low cost medical services? That Hao Yaod in the gang, who was a nurse and knows some basic medical skills, acts like he is the deputy gang leader. Are you going to lick his ass? Damn, now that you say that, but this is really the only place that hasn't been searched. Damn, everyone knows that this is the only place in District 9 that hasn't been searched. Everyone else is stupid, but you are smart and know to raid the house when Dr. Wang is not around. Okay, I won't search anymore. You make it sound like I've become a sinner. Think about it from another angle. Even if we find it, what will happen? Do you really think that the 1 million bonus will fall into our hands? Yeah, it is said that the highest bonus is 10 million, and when it reaches our boss, there will only be 1 million left. So it would be good if we could get 500,000. Besides, if I really give you 500,000, would you dare to keep it? Well, that's true. I remember that Brother Khan made a fortune before, just tens of thousands of Kyankan coins, but he died at home the next day. Yes, small fry like us should have the awareness of small fry. A happy and beautiful life has nothing to do with us. We should just patrol honestly and get our wages. As the conversation deepened, the footsteps outside the door finally faded away. Chapter 132 Wonderful Person. Scene didn't dare to be careless and held his breath tightly until he could no longer hear the footsteps. Then he let out a long sigh. If the two gang members really rushed in, there would be no place to hide in this narrow cave, and it would be a life and death situation. However, after listening to their conversation, Scene calmed down and gradually felt emotional. Why could Wang Yi, a mere person, hide a person with a bounty of 10 million, doubtful, in his home for 4 whole days without being noticed? Why could he be self-reliant in an environment like District 9 without relying on any organization? Why would he be willing to take risks and take in a wounded person with a bounty of 10 million, doubtful? Because he is indeed an admirable doctor. At this point, Scene was very pleased that he had never doubted the other party's character, but then another question came to his mind. Why would such a person end up as a homeless person in District 9? Scene's question was soon answered. Wang Yi himself told him frankly, "Why did I end up here? Haha, it's not that I fell into depravity. District 9 also has its advantages. After living here for a long time, I actually quite like this place without rules and regulations. But why did I come to District 9? Should I say it's fate? Well, actually, after I went bankrupt, I had to come here to escape debt." Why did you go bankrupt? Well, it should be said that you offended one or a group of big shots who you can't afford to offend. Wang Yi told a story that made people laugh at all. As a child born in a poor family, Wang Yi showed high intelligence since he was a child. In a civilian school, he relied on self-study and was admitted to the famous Zahar Medical University at the age of 14 and received a full scholarship. At the age of 20, he completed all his studies 3 years ahead of schedule and was specially invited to Nirvana for internship. In the hospital that ranks among the top 2 in the Kyan galaxy, Wang Yi continued to unleash his unparalleled talent. He completed all the work tasks during the internship 1 year ahead of schedule, and was promoted by the dean as the head of a new department as an exception. In just a few years, he developed this newly formed department into one of the trump cards in the hospital. During this period, he also met the love of his life, and gave birth to a lively and lovely daughter. The first half of the story is a beautiful fairy tale like a dream, but the plot takes a sharp turn here. When Wang Yi was 35 years old, Nirvana welcomed an extraordinary patient. When the man was sent to the emergency room, his whole body was festering, dying, and no longer in human form. Even the most advanced medical cabin in the Kyan galaxy could not save the rapidly losing vitality. What's worse, no one can tell clearly what disease this is. In just half a day, the patient hovered on the line of life and death several times, and almost all doctors announced that they were helpless. The patient's fate seemed to be unchangeable. But at this time, Wang Yi boldly put forward a guess, and took the initiative to ask to undertake the medical task. Facing dissuasion from superiors and colleagues, Wang Yi was stubborn and even used almost tough means to transfer the patient to his own department, and then tried his best to treat him. During this period, Wang Yi used all his life's learning without reservation, even some medical methods that have not yet been authoritatively certified. In the end, the patient successfully saved his life, a week's life. A week after Wang Yi announced that the patient's condition had improved, the patient died suddenly in the hospital bed. The subsequent development was absurd. As the attending physician, Wang Yi was arrested by the authorities before he even had time to perform an autopsy on the patient. Every avant-garde medical method he adopted during the treatment became evidence of his wanting to show off and disregard human life. And for such an unprovoked disaster, he did not even get a chance to refute. Colleagues in the hospital also responded with silence. Those junior doctors who were usually arrogant and respectful, and those superiors who always said they had high hopes for him, none of them lent him a hand. It was not until this time that Wang Yi finally learned that the patient he had forcibly pulled back from the brink of death and kept alive for a week was named Ma. The Ma family is one of the 4 major families of Kyankan group. The story that followed was logical. Wang Yi, who had assumed all medical responsibilities, could no longer be a celebrity doctor. The astronomical amount of medical compensation made this middle-class man with a thriving career go bankrupt, and then his wife and children were separated. The above is the ins and outs of how I fell to the 9th district. The story is a bit long-winded. You won't think I talk too much, right? After all, I haven't chatted with people like this for a long time. Wang Yi smiled and drank a sip of water. Under his messy beard and hair, he still had a sincere smile. Sin really couldn't understand why he could still laugh. After this story, even he, a bystander, felt indignant. How could there be such a ridiculous thing in the world? It's not ridiculous. In fact, everything is logical. Wang Yi said, I only gradually figured it out later. You see, I was not the only star doctor in the hospital at that time. In terms of knowledge and superb skills, I could only be ranked in the top 5. But at that time, everyone, including a senior whom I respected very much, made it clear that there was nothing they could do. It had only been half a day, and many test reports had not come out yet. After hearing this detail, Sin couldn't help but become suspicious. Do you think they deliberately gave up treatment? Wang Yi added, in fact, the dean and the vice dean gave me enough hints at the time, but unfortunately, my whole mind was attracted by the strange disease, and I turned a blind eye to their warnings. Later, as the patient's condition gradually improved, I finally found a clue, but it was too late. That person was poisoned. Poisoned? Well, a completely unknown poison, which acts directly on the genetic level and causes the total collapse of the physical body. It can't be naturally present, it can only be artificially manufactured. It's a pity that I didn't have time to analyze the composition of the poison before I ended up in District 9. Shouldn't I say the word fallen? So, that's why you said that you offended someone you shouldn't have offended? Well, the people of the 4 major families were poisoned by strange poisons, which was mostly the result of family infighting, and I, a doctor with no background, rashly got involved, forcibly saved the dying people, and tried to analyze the composition of the poison, so naturally I offended people. Later, that big man died on my hospital bed, which was the clearest warning. It's a pity that I didn't figure it out until I arrived in District 9. Scene couldn't help asking, then don't you hate all this? I hate it, but what problem can hatred solve? The 4 major families can shake the earth for us civilians just by moving their fingers. I'm alone now, and I still need to be more open-minded to survive. Haha. As Wang Yi smiled again, Scene felt that this person was amazing. There are such people in the world. Even after experiencing tragic changes in life, he can still be optimistic and clear-minded. He has neither deliberately forgotten the past, nor been blinded by resentment. Although he is in the wandering District 9, he still faces every day with optimism. What's more rare is that he obviously fell from the peak because of his meddling in other people's affairs, but now when he sees injured people, he will still lend a hand without hesitation. For a moment, Scene seemed to be infected by Wang Yi's smile, and all the negative emotions in his heart caused by being in trouble were swept away. Chapter 133 Food is the most important thing. A good state of mind is a great help to the recovery of injuries. After that conversation, Scene's injury recovered very smoothly. In just 4 or 5 days, he was able to walk normally and do simple stretches. Although it is still a long way from recovering combat capability, it is undoubtedly a very good sign. Wang Yi was full of praise for this. Young people have strong vitality. They can recover so quickly, even though they lack medical care and medicine. It's a pity that the medical resources in District 9 are still too scarce. Otherwise, even if you get some regular Bacter ointment, you can recover in 2 days after being on the ground for half a day. However, it's always a good thing to be able to heal like this. Let me celebrate with you today. Scene was surprised. Celebrate? You must be tired of drinking meat porridge after so many days. I will take you to taste the most famous folk snacks in Xiangsuan District. Hey, there are folk snacks in District 9. Of course not in District 9. It's the Ma family's Azu in District 7. It is a famous specialty food in the entire galaxy. But in the final analysis, it's just common people's food. If you are expecting a luxurious meal like the Kaoan banquet, you will probably be disappointed. After all, I'm just a homeless man now, and can't afford 2 good things. Wang Yi chattered, while pulling Scene into the cave. Scene didn't realize what the self-centered middle-aged man was talking about until he couldn't help but take a step, and felt a slight tingling sensation from the wound on his leg. You're taking me to District 7 now? Although it was only a matter of time for Scene to leave District 9, the most ideal situation was, of course, to recover from his injuries, investigate the enemy situation, and take action when he was sure enough. Leaving the cave rashly now would not benefit anyone. If someone discovered his tracks in District 7, Wang Yi, the harboring criminal, would not have a good ending. So although Scene was surprised that Wang Yi had the means to take him to District 7, his first reaction was that it was inappropriate. Wang Yi said, "Of course not like this. I can help you disguise yourself. I'm more professional in disguise technology here." Scene declined, "But I still don't think it's wise to take the risk of exposing your tracks. So, do you have any reason to go to District 7? Scene didn't think the other party was deliberately planning to harm him. With the doctor's means, if he really wanted to harm him, there were many ways to do it. There was no need to trick him to District 7. The current situation was more like Wang Yi wanted to go to District 7, but he was worried about Scene being alone. After all, not long after he left last time, gang members came to his house and were just about to break in. After being seen through, Wang Yi was embarrassed. "It's not that I have to go. If you are worried, I can stay here." Scene certainly wouldn't make it difficult for his savior, not to mention that he himself had an urgent need to leave District 9. "It just so happens that I also want to go to District 7 to have a look. Of course it would be best if someone can lead the way. But how do we get there?" Wang Yi was relieved to see that Scene was easy to talk to and explained with a smile, "It's very convenient to go to District 7 now. The blockade of District 9 is becoming less and less. Although there are still guards at all the main entrances and exits, people's hearts have long flown away, and we don't need to go through those main roads. I have a secret passage here, Wang Yi said, lifting a curtain, revealing a pile of bottles and jars. That was his warehouse for storing rice, flour, grain, and oil. It was always neatly organized and piled up. But there was a different world in this crowded warehouse. Wang Yi pushed open a heavy iron can, revealing a tightly closed gate on the ground. Wang Yi opened the gate with a heavy breath, and a winding passageway downward appeared in front of him. Seeing this, Xin suddenly realized, is this the reason why you settled in the cave? Wang Yi smiled and said, almost. Otherwise, it is more comfortable to live in a building. The drinking water and electricity in this cave are very troublesome. It takes a long way to go out to exchange some food. But as long as this secret passage is still there, I will not go anywhere. In Xiangsuan District 9, the passage that can freely go to other areas is a priceless treasure. Xin nodded to show his understanding. The declining District 9 has long been reduced to the home of criminals. The adjacent Districts 7 and 8 carry out various personnel and material controls on a daily basis. On this basis, the passageway that can break the control and sneak into other areas is naturally priceless. It's an exaggeration to say it's priceless. In fact, there are many secret passages in District 9. Walking in the dark passage, Wang Yi remained talkative, using a flashlight to illuminate the way ahead, while explaining the story of the secret passage to Xin. Xin continued to use disguise props to change his skin color and raise his cheeks and cheekbones, while listening carefully to Wang Yi's story. The design plan for the Xiangsuan District 9 was ostensibly for the purpose of accommodating small businesses, but in fact, the idea of building the Xiangsuan black market was in place from the very beginning. You see, this place is surrounded by all directions, and even the light from the stars cannot shine in. Once Buzzhao stops supplying energy, it becomes pitch black, which seems to be a defect. But on the other hand, this place is naturally a well-connected transportation hub, and it is very convenient to go anywhere. Later, during the actual construction of the District 9, the dignitaries who were interested in black market business began to show their talents, and all kinds of secret passages that were not officially regulated were built openly, stacked one on top of another like a dark web. This network once supported the prosperity of the District 9, and also witnessed its decline. After the almost open black market business was severely cracked down, most of the secret passages were also destroyed. But when it was built, there were too many secret passages in the District 9, so a considerable number of them have been preserved to this day. The one I occupy is just an insignificant one among them. The insignificant secret passage in Wang Yi's mouth was long and winding. Xin followed Wang Yi and walked for half a standard hour before he finally saw the dawn. Along with the dawn came a slightly harsh clamor. Fried rice. Fried rice fresh out of the pan. Newly opened. 50% off for everything. Newly opened. 50% off for everything. Omakase. Authentic omakase. Accompanying this clamor was the mouth-watering aroma of food. Xin's stomach grumbled involuntarily, and Wang Yi smiled slightly, quickened his pace, and pushed open a half-closed wooden door at the end of the passage, revealing a brilliant and prosperous light. Welcome to the Xiangsuan District 7. Food is Heaven Square. Wang Yi took a few steps forward, opened his hands exaggeratedly, and introduced the beautiful scenery ahead to Xin. Chapter 134, Miscellaneous. In a neat and orderly block, there are countless restaurants and shops. Merchants use dazzling neon lights and harsh shouts to attract passers-by and sell their own delicacies. For a moment, Xin felt dizzy and felt that seeing is believing. The guidebook of Li has a detailed introduction to Food is Heaven. In most living areas of this space city, there is a dining area called Food is Heaven, which concentrates most of the restaurants and pubs to meet the daily needs of residents. But no matter how gorgeous the words in the manual are, or how tempting the pictures are, they can't bring the feeling of being there in person. Food is Heaven in District 7 is particularly different, because it has the most fireworks and the most human touch. Wang Yi patted Xin on the shoulder, motioning him to follow him, and not stand still. Xin was still scanning the surroundings, wishing to take in all the scenery in an instant. He was startled when he was tapped on the shoulder. He realized that the two people suddenly emerged from the secret passage, which was already eye-catching. If they stayed where they were, they would be like a billboard. Although he had carefully disguised himself and put on Wang Yi's old clothes, even if he met someone face to face, the other party would probably not recognize that this homeless man who looked to be in his 30s was a wanted criminal worth 2 million. However, at this point in time, two homeless people from District 9 who suddenly emerged from the secret passage would inevitably attract attention. Wang Yi was well aware of Sin's concerns and said, "Don't worry, no one will care about us. District 7 is adjacent to District 9, and the people here have long been accustomed to people from District 9 suddenly emerging from somewhere. As long as you don't cause trouble, others won't bother you." After a pause, Wang Yi smiled and said, "After all, no one knows when they will use these secret passages." Sin was startled when he heard this. What did he mean? Unfortunately, Wang Yi's attention had been attracted by a large pot placed on the street not far away. It was a large pot that was particularly characteristic of this galaxy. The pot was boiling with brown soup, and meat, pancakes, and spices were rolling in the soup, exuding an alluring aroma. However, Wang Yi only stayed in front of the pot for a moment, shook his head, and patted Sin's arm to indicate that it was not this one. After walking a few steps away, Wang Yi said with great sorrow, "It's degenerate. This family's mixed stew has also degenerate. There is obviously less meat, and the spices are also starting to be short of weight. Relying on being a local, they are starting to cheat. The most famous specialty food is heaven in District 7 is Mars mixed stew, which is destroying their own reputation." Sin couldn't comment on whether Mars mixed stew had degenerated or not, but it was obvious that Wang Yi was in a very high mood at the moment and didn't need Sin's response. "Forget it, let's go to the one in front, it shouldn't be wrong." After Wang Yi said that, he pulled Sin to walk a little further on the street and found another large pot placed on the street. Obviously, the characteristic of this Mars omakase is this big pot. And this time, Wang Yi walked to the pot and finally did not show a disappointed look. He gestured to a Gungan boss behind the counter with a smile, and then pulled Sin to sit at the empty table next to him. This skillful gesture fully shows how experienced Wang Yi is. However, as Wang Yi sat down, Sin felt that his mind seemed to be not on the table at all. Although Wang Yi tried his best to hide it, his erratic eyes and anxious heartbeat exposed his true thoughts. He was paying attention to a omakase restaurant across the street. It must be said that there are many omakase restaurants in Food is Heaven in District 7. However, when Sin looked around, he only saw a omakase restaurant with a booming business. It was no different from the one he was in. Both the boss and the customers were just ordinary people who came to District 7 to enjoy delicious food. So, what was Wang Yi paying attention to? Why did he come to District 7 at the risk of a huge risk? It couldn't be just for a bowl of omakase, right? However, the boss of Gangan served the dishes very quickly. 2 minutes after the two sat down, 2 bowls of steaming Mars mixed stew were brought to the table, interrupting Sin's thoughts. Sin took a pair of chopsticks from the chopstick holder on the table, stirred the soup bowl, and scooped up a piece of tender and juicy meat. Before he could eat it, Wang Yi's explanation reached his ears. The doctor's attention seemed to have returned to the table, and he was obviously more excited than before, so that his talkative nature was doubled. The most authentic Mars mixed stew should use inferior canned bantha meat, because when the first generation of colonists invented this dish, it was an exploration team that was in desperation. They searched all the food warehouses and found a pile of abandoned inferior cans. They made a pot of steaming hot but exciting mixed stew. Then they discovered the rich mineral vein in cunning and completed the most critical step of colonization, getting rich. After a pause, Wang Yi smiled and said, "Guess what happened later?" Sin put the piece of meat on the chopsticks into his mouth, savored the taste carefully, and then said, "If it is based on the general situation in history that I know, the first generation of colonists will quickly fall into the embrace of luxury after getting rich, and when their taste buds are finally numbed by the rare delicacies, they will miss the food they ate when they were poor. But times have changed." Wang Yi almost laughed out loud. "Great, you're right about everything." When Mars mixed stew was first restored, the group of wealthy people who were eagerly waiting for it vomited half of it on the spot. Later, after several improvements, the inferior canned meat was replaced with cooked meat, and even the bantha meat was replaced with rare pork. The spices were changed again and again. In the end, this pot of mixed stew was finally improved to a level that the rich could eat, but it was no different from the delicacies they enjoyed every day, and it was completely different from the original mixed stew. Scene liked this kind of historical story the most, and gradually listened attentively. What happened later? The reputation of Ma's mixed stew couldn't have been spread like this, right? Later, the chefs who improved the mixed stew for those wealthy people accidentally found the best ratio, using relatively cheap, but not inferior canned food, and matching it with. Wang Yi suddenly stopped talking here. This kind of storytelling method, that was neither good nor bad, was undoubtedly the most annoying to the audience. Scene felt that the meat in his mouth was no longer fragrant. But soon, he realized that Wang Yi was not deliberately keeping him in suspense. He was distracted again. What caught Wang Yi's attention was still the Zabashi restaurant across the street, and this time, Scene also saw the point. The restaurant welcomed a special guest, a girl who looked to be in her early teens, with long wavy hair that attracted a lot of attention, wearing a white and elegant girl's dress. In this fireworks-filled food is heaven, she was like a little princess in a fairy tale. Chapter 135 Daughter. The little princess on the opposite street used extremely skilled gestures to order a small bowl of mixed stew from the boss at the counter. Then, ignoring the surprised eyes around her, she found a quiet but safe place and took out a holographic book to read. Scene had excellent eyesight since he was a child. Even across the street and the surging crowd on the street, he could vaguely identify the content of the holographic image through the image. It was an introductory medical textbook. Where were we just talking about? Wang Yi's voice came again. Scene lost interest in the story of mixed stew and chuckled. Speaking of why your daughter came here to eat mixed stew. She has been. Damn, how did you know? Wang Yi finally lost his usual calmness and looked horrified, almost falling off the stool. Scene took a step ahead and reached out to hold him, then said, "You are too obvious, and that girl really looks like you." Really? Wang Yi immediately looked delighted. I knew it. Scene could only apologize inwardly. Wang Yi, who was now thick-haired and neglected, really didn't look like the delicate little princess at all. The so-called similarity was only because she was reading a medical book. But Scene's praise really made Wang Yi feel full of happiness and immersed in the memories of the past. Wang Lu has been very smart since she was a child, even smarter than I was when I was a child, and she has a strong interest in medicine. Her taste in food is also very similar to mine. After all, I have been dragging her here to eat mixed stew since she can remember. Scene couldn't help but be curious. You, a promising doctor, bring your daughter here? Wang Yi smiled and said, so her mother is always very unhappy. We always have to quarrel about this, but little Wang Lu always stands on my side. She is more stubborn than me. I guess little Wang Lu also took advantage of the tutoring class to finish early today and sneaked here. For this bowl of mixed stew, this child really tried her best. After that, Wang Yi told a lot of interesting stories between him and his daughter. He is very eloquent, and when immersed in a happy atmosphere, his words have a magical power of incitement. But Scene couldn't help but sigh while listening. The once happy family is now falling apart, and the promising genius doctor is exiled for performing his duties. The more optimistic Wang Yi is at this time, the heavier the pressure on Scene's heart. Things shouldn't be like this. But he was powerless to do anything about it. The Jedi apprentice couldn't protect himself now, so how could he seek justice for Wang Yi? At this moment, Wang Yi's story was suddenly interrupted. It should be said that the fireworks on the whole street were interrupted by a sudden foreign object. It was a small airship with smooth lines like a drop of water. The light around it dyed it with a gorgeous halo, and the golden tail flame at the tail made it carry a compelling deterrent when it fell from the sky. Even people who knew nothing about airships could see its luxury at a glance. As an airship enthusiast, Scene easily distinguished its specifications, performance, and manufacturer, and then estimated that its price was enough to buy an apartment in a bustling commercial district. But more important than the price is the meaning of this airship. The golden tail flame is a proof of identity and status, and it is a tough declaration that it definitely does not belong to the civilian class. Therefore, when this airship landed in food is heaven, it would suddenly destroy the fireworks here. Almost everyone's eyes were focused on her, and words of amazement and envy were heard everywhere. At the same time, Wang Yi's expression became helpless. He murmured, "She is still that extremely strong woman." As he spoke, a gorgeous woman walked down from the airship. The first word that came to Seen's mind was gorgeous. She was wearing an expensive dress, dazzling jewelry, and her steps were quick and steady. She exuded an aura that kept strangers away. She walked straight to her daughter and looked down at her. Although the woman's eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, they were enough to form a sense of oppression that seemed to be real. Some diners around couldn't help but want to get up and leave. Fortunately, the young Wang Lu was very sensible and didn't mean to cause trouble to others. She looked at the half-eaten mixed stew with some regret, then silently put away the holographic book and grabbed her mother's hand. The mother and daughter returned to the airship hand in hand, as if nothing had happened, and left. Soon, the noisy atmosphere returned to the street. However, the mixed stew in front of Wang Yi seemed to have no taste at all, and the handsome and talkative doctor also became silent. Seen asked, "Did you come here specially to see your daughter?" Wang Yi was silent for a while, and nodded. "Actually, I shouldn't get close to her. Her current husband doesn't like them to have too many connections with the past, especially me. But this is, food is heaven, even if it's a gangster boss, as long as he sits down to eat. He is just an ordinary diner, so you don't have to explain this to me." Scene interrupted. "Is there any way to save all this?" Wang Yi shrugged helplessly. "If there was, how could I be a homeless person in the cave for so long?" Scene asked again, "Is it a matter of money?" "Nominally, the reason why I was forced to go to District 9 is that I owed millions of debts that I couldn't repay." Scene smiled and said, "It sounds like my bounty amount can help you." "It's useless. It's not about the money." Wang Yi directly rejected Scene's joke. "Even if I really get the money and fill the hole, someone will immediately dig a deeper hole for me. I have suffered losses and harmed my friends in the past. Otherwise, in 5 years, I would have been able to collect enough redemption money even in District 9. And now I would rather be a vagrant who does not work than let my hard-earned money be used to nourish my enemies." At this point, Wang Yi laughed again. "So, although I also think it is unlikely, you must not think of turning yourself in exchange for money to repay my life-saving grace. That is harming me, understand?" Scene asked again, "Then who dug the hole for you?" "That is not important. What's important is that I must stay in this hole." Wang Yi explained, "This pit reflects the authority of the Kyankan group and the order of this galaxy. Anyone who tries to challenge it will not have a good end. So, I had many friends before the incident, but after the incident, I would rather have no friends at all." Afterwards, Wang Yi patted Scene on the shoulder and said, "Don't look so serious. This is a good result for me. I'm still alive and free. I can even see my daughter every now and then. You don't want to leave because of your daughter?" Wang Yi was silent for a while and said, "Yes, it's good to be somewhere else, but she is not there. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 136 to 5-year periods. With Wang Yi's medical skills and medical ethics, what happened that year did not directly lead to his death. In fact, it was equivalent to Kyankan Group's tacit consent to let him live. He could completely leave the Kyan Galaxy and enjoy the vastness of the world. A doctor like him would receive the warmest welcome anywhere in the Galactic Republic. But there is no daughter Wang Lu anywhere else. "Can't you pick up your daughter too?" Scene asked again. Wang Yi finally showed his bitterness. "I can't harm her." "But," Scene originally wanted to say, "if you take her away, are you afraid that you won't be able to give her a good enough life? Your medical skills can help you live a good life at any time." However, thinking of the luxurious woman and the high-altitude airship, the Jedi apprentice couldn't help but shut his mouth. Wang Yi also sighed at this time. Her current father is Lei Yangsun, the new president of Nirvana. He is the son of the director of Xiran Medicine. His position of power is far beyond that of a grassroots doctor like me. Even if Xiao Wanglu is not his biological daughter, she can still get better educational resources than me, but by following me, she can only start from scratch. More importantly, Lei Yangxin has always hated me, and he is very possessive and vain. If I kidnap little Wanglu, he will definitely not let Wanglu's mother go, because of his shame. I don't want to harm them both for my own selfishness. En hesitated several times, but in the end he could only pat Wang Yi on the shoulder and comfort him. There is still a chance. What chance? Wang Yi smiled, not taking this casual comfort seriously. Xin said seriously, when your daughter grows up, the opportunity will naturally come. No matter how controlling Lei Yangxin is, I'm afraid he won't be able to control a daughter who is not his biological daughter for the rest of his life. Wang Yi was startled when he heard this, and then laughed. You're right, absolutely right. It's just a word that wakes up the dreamer. Why didn't I think of such a simple thing? Xiao Wanglu will also grow up. When she grows up, she can make her own decisions. With her stubbornness and independence, no one can control her. At this point, Wang Yi sighed again. However, it will take at least 15 years after she graduates from medical school. No, since Xiao Wanglu is my daughter, maybe 10 years is enough. I only need to wait another 10 years, 10 years, to 5 years. The melancholy mood only stayed for a moment, and Wang Yi's face showed another sign. A smile broke out. Okay, let's stop talking about this in advance. Let's eat quickly. I'll take you to drink sugar water later. Xin wanted to decline, but after thinking about it, he still couldn't bear to spoil Wang Yi's interest, so he nodded in agreement, received the other party's invitation. Shi Weishan's desserts are of an unexpectedly high standard, but what's even more unexpected is that after the two of them finished the desserts, Wang Yi patted Xin on the back and said, "Go home." These words Xin was greatly surprised. Go home? Wang Yi seemed not to hear the implication of Xin's words, and explained, although I understand your love for food is heaven, let's go back today. We are here, it's been a long time since we've been here. Xin didn't want to be vague anymore. I think it would be more beneficial for you and me to just break up. No matter how transcendent Wang Yi's status is in District 9, he has fallen into a trap. As a homeless man, the risk was too great for him to harbor a wanted GD Paduan. Similarly, if Xin continues to hide in District 9, it is only a matter of time before he is exposed. It is better to take this opportunity to sneak into the more noisy District 7. However, Wang Yi smiled and shook his head. The difference between doctors and patients will only be after the patient recovers. And the current 7th district is actually more dangerous than the 9th district. Many people think that you have left the 9th district and are not the same as the 9th district. Districts 7 and 8, which are adjacent to District 9, have become the biggest suspects. As far as I know, there are many bounty hunters in Quanxing Road and Gucheng Road, and food is the sky is too noisy. It has become a blind spot for the time being, but it is only a matter of time before you are targeted. You might as well recover from your injuries in District 9 before thinking about it. Wang Yi successfully persuaded Xin. After returning to District 9 with Wang Yi, Xin lived a peaceful life for a few days. Everything is as Wang Yi said. People's attention has gradually shifted from the 9th district to the next door, and now the 9th district has become a safe zone. In the past few days, Wang Yi has occasionally gone out, but there will no longer be uninvited guests at home. The relatively safe environment made Xin's recovery go smoother than expected. In just a few days, his gunshot wound was almost healed. This was a miracle in an environment where medical treatment was scarce. Wang Yi even joked that, if he is still in Nirvana, and such a patient must leave some sample information no matter what. But Xin's mood could never calm down. No matter how comfortable the surrounding environment seemed, he always felt as if there was a sharp knife hanging above his head. Zizi and the black armored security soldier, these two people would always appear in Xin's mind. They couldn't just give up. The tranquility at this moment was just a huge storm silently accumulating energy. However, the storm came earlier than Xin expected. On this day, Wang Yi left the cave early and went to District 7 to enjoy mixed food. But of course, the mixed food was just a side dish, and his lovely daughter was the main course. Scene didn't tag along with him this time, as frequent appearances in District 7 would do neither of them any good. Staying in the cave is also risky, so Scene chooses to wait in the secret passage. The dark environment is not only an excellent hiding place for GD apprentices, but also a natural training ground. Scene hid his figure in the rubble of the secret passage, closed his eyes, and began his usual meditation. After arriving in the Kyan galaxy, his connection with the Force became even closer, and several life and death crises greatly tempered his will. Compared with the previous GD Padawan, Scene is now more mature and sharper. But Scene is not satisfied with this progress. He never thinks that there are any shortcuts in GD practice. Now his improvement is just a matter of accumulation. Since he was a young apprentice, he has understood the importance of hard work better than most of his peers, so he firmly believes that if daily practice is abandoned because of temporary progress, then the path to GD will end here. However, Scene seemed destined to have no luck in practicing peace of mind. When he was immersed in the surge of the Force, he quickly caught an unusual tributary. It was like a spark hovering in front of my eyes, almost fleeting. But the GD apprentice immediately woke up from his meditation, and almost without hesitation got up and headed towards the 7th area. Chapter 137. No hesitation. Scene knew very well that the spark that flashed in meditation was a warning from the Force. Although it was only a vague point, and although he would not have been able to feel even this revelation without the progress during this period. But no matter how small, the revelation of the Force is crucial at any time. While walking, Scene gradually slowed down his breathing, calmed his mind, and began to think seriously about the current situation. Revelation would not come for no reason. Judging from the current situation, it is most likely that something happened to Wang Yi. In fact, when Wang Yi left District 9, Scene had already had a vague foreboding. No matter how easy Wang Yi behaved, this city was ultimately under the control of the Kyankan group, not Wang Yi. The threat of the Black Armored Warrior and Zai still existed. In this case, Wang Yi and Scene left the cave and appeared in District 7, which was risky after all. But Scene did not have enough reasons to convince Wang Yi to stay. The other party went from a celebrity doctor to a homeless man overnight, and then lived alone in District 9 for many years. What supported him to stay optimistic was probably the little girl who ate mixed stew at Food is Heaven from time to time. At this time, it was completely unrealistic to use the risk that will always exist to persuade Wang Yi to stay. However, the worst possibility did happen. When Scene came to Food is Heaven again, he was still greeted by bright lights and the aroma of delicious food. But the GD apprentice was very keen to find that the environment here was different from the last time. The noise became smaller, the smiles of people on the street seemed to be restrained, and even the neon lights above their heads seemed weak. Everything was explaining what happened here not long ago. Scene was not in a hurry to ask, because he was conspicuous enough when he appeared from the secret passage, and rashly asking would only make people target him faster. So he still maintained the appearance of a homeless man in District 9, imitated Wang Yi's posture, and found a bougie restaurant to sit down. Wang Yi left him some change before leaving, which was just right for him to use at this time. So far, Scene did not find any special eyes paying attention to him, but he still did not try to ask questions. After all, he was not a local, and it would be easy to reveal his flaws if he rashly asked questions. It would be better for him to be a diner here. With the sharp 5 senses of a GD apprentice, when he listened attentively, the information would naturally reach his ears. Most of the information around him was empty and boring. Comments on food, complaints about family, expectations for work. Scene was patient, eating meat and drinking soup slowly, while waiting for valuable information to arrive. Just when the mild-mannered Gungan boss couldn't help but want to drive him away, Scene finally heard the news he wanted. They were 2 Mon Calamari people. There were not many of their people in the Kyan system, but they were basically distributed in this particularly open space city, so they didn't seem out of place in Food is Heaven. The 2 enjoyed the affordable but modified hometown food, but the topic of discussion was not the taste of food, but the dock renovation project of Lee. It was not until the end of the meal that they had the leisure to get into the main topic. I still think we should go to The room for display there is much larger than here, and any heavy industry subsidiary under B group can better display our technology. But only in Lee can we get fair treatment, instead of being stepped on by locals, who are far inferior to us. No matter how fair the treatment is, it is not as important as a stable environment, and now, Lee can't even manage the public security in Chiangsaen district. First the cargo ship crashed, and then passers-by were hijacked in Food is Heaven, in broad daylight. The crash of the cargo ship was just an accident, and such accidents can happen anywhere. As for the so-called hijacking just now, to be honest, I'm more inclined to understand it as a reasonable law enforcement, but the law enforcement officers are not from Chiangsaen security, and the law enforcement method is a bit extreme. That homeless man has been harassing a poor little girl. He was taken away by the victim's family, and he deserved it. Poor little girl. She is the daughter of the Dean of Nirvana. How can you pity her? And that homeless man is her real family. How can it be called harassment? Didn't you hear the girl's cries? I didn't hear it, and I suggest you didn't hear it either. Don't forget how those people who jumped off the black ship beat people in the street. They didn't even bother to show their law enforcement certificates to people. Don't forget that our annual physical examinations are still arranged at the subordinate guidance hospital of Nirvana. The conversation between the two diners ended here, and Scene had gotten everything he wanted. This couldn't be a coincidence, or even if it was a coincidence, it didn't matter. The problem now was simple. Wang Yi was in trouble, and Scene had no choice but to help. Before, he had lent a hand without hesitation when Scene was in trouble, and this time it was Scene's turn to save people. As Wang Yi said, if even doctors are unwilling to save doctors, who else will save doctors? If even people like Wang Yi can't get a good ending, is there any justice in this world? Thinking of this, Scene no longer hesitated. He paid the bill, stood up and walked to the information service office of Food for Heaven, took a free guidebook for tourists, and read it carefully. The low-quality holographic book could not provide much content, but Scene still found the information he needed from it. Chiangsaen District 2, Nirvana. Well, it's quite convenient to go all the way there. After whispering to himself, Scene put the manual back to its original place, tidied up his worn-out coat, and walked with his head held high, blending into the crowded crowd around him. His figure was light and clever, and he didn't look like he was seriously injured and unconscious a few days ago. When he left Food is Heaven, he had become a middle-aged clerk wearing an affordable shirt and a bloated body. He was holding a tablet computer in his hand and reading it while walking. There are countless such clerical workers in Chiangsaen district. Most of them belong to large and medium-sized enterprises. They work in the prosperous areas of Chiangsaen district and enjoy the decency brought by the environment. However, the meager income often forces them to go to the civilian areas to solve the dining problem, and even the accommodation has to fall to Chiangsaen district or even more remote places. Therefore, when Scene squeezed in the crowd and waited for the bus airship, he did not appear a bit abrupt. He could even imitate the people around him while waiting, looking up documents and writing forms on his tablet, performing meticulously. When Scene squeezed down from the crowded bus airship, he surprisingly completed another disguise. Although he was still an ordinary low-level clerk, he looked much thinner than before, with a square hat on his head, and his height was half a head taller. At this time, he was already in Chiangsaen District 5, a prosperous area full of various educational institutions. Shortly after Scene landed, he completed his last disguise in a public toilet. This time, he disguised himself as a teacher. He was as young and tall as the real him. The only difference was that he had a pair of glasses on his nose and his long ungroomed hair was combed back, which made his immature appearance look much more mature. And the clothes he had worn before, and the props he had brought with him were all thrown into the lost and found basket without anyone noticing. Chapter 138 Lei Yangsen. Scene completed the last stretch of the road as a teacher. He walked through the small 5th district and arrived at the adjacent 2nd district. And when we arrived at the Chiangsaen 2nd district, the figure of Nirvana was right in front of us. as one of the most famous buildings in the 2nd district. The main building of Nirvana is not particularly tall and sturdy, but it is particularly eye-catching. It is suspended directly in the air by 4 thick cable ducts extending from the main axis of the city. There is no support. From below, it looks like a star high above. In fact, Nirvana plays the same role in Chiangsaen district. It possesses the most cutting-edge medical technology in the galaxy, and its status is transcendent in the entire city and even in the galaxy. Because any powerful man who controls everything in the city will inevitably bow to Nirvana. Even the directors of Kyankan Group often come here for physical examination and medical treatment. Therefore, Nirvana has enough reasons to exclude common people. And the circle of security airships outside Nirvana also clearly exuded a cold aura that kept strangers away. However, SYN had no intention of sneaking into Nirvana. The security there was too tight. Let alone sneaking in, it would be dangerous for him to even get too close. With the preparations he has made now, it is already the limit to be able to reach the 2nd area smoothly. But it's enough. SYN stopped far away from Nirvana. Found a seat at a nearby drink shop, bought 2 special drinks with the change he picked up along the way, and then took out a holographic book and read it silently. There are many young teachers and researchers like this around Nirvana, but there is nothing about SYN that attracts attention. 2 drinks allowed SYN to spend 3 hours in the store smoothly. He read half of the literary work at hand with ease, and further calmed down his mind. He knew very well that what he was going to do next was not an upright thing, and it even went against the rules he had always believed in. If there were other Jedi apprentices around him, most of them would oppose his choice. But SYN is stubborn, he is calm, and he is not dazzled by any negative emotions, nor is he seeking his own selfish interests. During this time, he also constructed a detailed action plan in his mind. Regardless of success or failure, he had a response plan, and even considered the worst case scenario. At this point, he couldn't think of any reason to back down. Unknowingly, SYN had become accustomed to not having his master around. Although he needs to make his own decisions and bear the consequences of everything, he no longer feels confused or afraid. I'm doing the right thing and that's enough. When SYN was about to order his 3rd drink, he finally got what he wanted. In the distant sky, 2 gorgeous golden tail flames dragged out a slender trajectory, leaving from the high Nirvana. SYN immediately locked his eyes on the 2 tail flames, then stood up and followed. The speed of walking on foot is naturally not as fast as that of an airship, but thanks to Nirvana's commanding position and the gorgeous posture of the airship, viewed from below, its trajectory is clear. Half an hour later, SYN followed and arrived outside a private club in Chiangsaen District 2. It was a small wooden building standing within a high wall. From a distance, only the pointed roof could be seen. With raised eaves and corners, the main body is isolated from sight by the cold metal wall. The teardrop-shaped airship was parked in the underground hangar of the club. SYN had seen it with his own eyes, so there was no mistaking it. So the next question is how to blend inside the high wall. Looking at the cold camera on the wall, SYN couldn't help but fall into deep thought. After a moment, he chuckled, shook his head, and stepped into the cordon. The other side. For the upper class people in Lee, attending some dinner parties and private clubs is an indispensable job. The upper class can be extravagant, cruel, and even uneducated, but they must never cut themselves off from the social circle of their peers. Therefore, even though Lei Yangsen was in an extremely bad mood, he still had to suppress his anger and go to a banquet after get off work, where he and a group of young masters and ladies who belonged to the same circle made excuses. Fortunately, the content of the banquet was quite interesting. At the dinner table, people kept talking about the embarrassment of the little princess of Nanming capital, and speculated when she would be unable to support herself and collapse completely. This topic has also been a hot topic in the entire galaxy recently. With the help of Nanujin, Nan Wuiyao is trying to gather the legacy left by Nanheli, but her jerky actions obviously cannot give confidence to the family members. Although her progress was rapid, time was not on her side. A middle-aged man with a big belly suddenly asked, Dean Lee, your family has always been on good terms with the Nan family. Is there any latest news? Lei Yangsen shook the wine glass in his hand and said with a smile, the little princess has many things to do every day, but she also I can't take care of a small family like the Lei family, so I don't have any new news. Dean Lei, you are being hypocritical. The healthcare reform bill that you have been promoting recently was only passed with the support of the Nan family. You still say that they can't take care of you? Lei Yangsen smiled again. Director Eugene did give us a lot of support in this matter, but after all, he is only a director of Nanming Capital and cannot fully represent Nanming. The will of capital cannot represent the little princess herself. After saying that, he drank the wine in the glass and let others figure out the meaning behind his words. The participants of this dinner are already rich or noble, but compared to the direct heirs of the 4 major families, they are not worth mentioning. Even if the little princess of the Nan family really compromises with the board of directors and is willing to be a puppet, her status is still far higher than a group of local powerful people entrenched in Li. Therefore, some words can only be spoken until then, even in such a private gathering. However, those who understand will naturally understand. After that, similar information was continuously passed on during the banquet, until everyone at the banquet got what they wanted, and the banquet gradually dispersed. After leaving the table, Lei Yangsen had a smile on his face. The pleasure brought by power made him temporarily forget the anger he felt not long ago. However, before he could enter the underground hangar, he was stopped by a person in the passage. Seeing the dark armor on the person's body and the weathered face, Lei Yangsen suddenly became angry. It's you again. I told you not to bother me anymore. Kyankan security cannot cover the sky with one hand even in Li. Chapter 139 Touching. Facing Lei Yangsen's threatening words, Xia Jiang just smiled indifferently. Kyankan security will not cover the sky with one hand anywhere. I'm here to remind you that the poor doctor has already paid enough. This should be the tacit understanding reached back then. You have crossed the line today. Lei Yangsen looked at the middle-aged face with untidy beard, as if he saw the man he hated the most, so he couldn't control himself at all and cursed. You are not qualified to draw a line for me. Do you think you are noble, just because you have the surname Xia? Can you point fingers at my affairs? You are just an abandoned child of the Xia family. I don't take people like you seriously at all. Xia Jiang was not angry or annoyed, but still blocked Lei Yangsen. Dean Lei can naturally ignore me, but you should always take your own safety seriously. I really can't control how you deal with the previous things, so I just came to remind you that you'd better pay more attention recently. Pay attention to what? Lei Yangsen sneered. Pay attention to our own club, and don't let people like you sneak in. Xia Jiang smiled. Dean Lei, although my security squadron is not worth mentioning in the eyes of you upper class people, but logically speaking, as the squadron leader, I have the right to enter any non-core areas in the city when necessary. Logically speaking, have the right. Lei Yangsen was so angry that he laughed. In this city, power has never come from those empty legal provisions, but from one's own strength. Xia Jiang said, that's right, so I didn't use my ID card to swipe in through the main gate. I relied on my own strength. You. Lei Yangsen was stunned when he heard the words, and then he suddenly realized, and suddenly felt a chill on his back. What do you want to do? He looked around, only to see that the passage from the banquet hall to the underground hangar was empty at this time. There was only him, a weak dean, and the other party was a security soldier who dared to break into an upper class club. Don't be nervous. If I really want to do something, you won't even know it until you die. Xia Jiang patted the other person's shoulder. I just want to wake you up. When you cross the line, the world is not as safe as you think. Anyway, my warning has been brought to you. You should take care of yourself. You don't need to remind me. Xia Jiang said, I think I still need to remind you. Your life and death are related to whether I need to spend time writing a lengthy self-criticism report, and I hate reports the most. When he said the last few words, Xia Jiang had already left from the other end of the passage. Although he did not come in from the main entrance, he obviously intended to leave from the main entrance. Only the middle-aged man's voice was left in the passage, and each echo was like a knock on Lei Yangsen's heart, making the Dean of Nirvana more and more angry. He overturned the potted plants on the side of the passage and tore a valuable painting into pieces, but the anger in his heart did not vent at all. In anger, Lei Yangtze could not help but think of the culprit. He had no intention of spending too much energy on a homeless man and just let his men deal with him, but now he changed his mind. Wang Yi, you have to wait for me. Gnashing his teeth, Lei Yangtze boarded his own flying boat and sat in the back seat. It was not until he drank the cold water on the armrest and calmed down that he remembered that the pilot of the flying boat did not take the initiative to greet him, but let him, the owner, open the door himself. Lei Yangtze's anger surged again, and he couldn't help but kick the driver's seat. Old Li, you don't want to mess around anymore, right? However, the next moment, he realized that the person sitting in the driver's seat was not Old Li. Through the rearview mirror, he only saw a strange young face. Lei Yangtze felt a chill, and the anger in his heart was instantly replaced by fear. He subconsciously reached out to pull the door of the flying boat, but found that the door was completely locked. He tried to shout loudly, but saw that the soundproof cover had been opened inside the flying boat. Pieces of soundproof panels were extended and instantly covered the inner wall of the flying boat, so no one could hear him, even if he shouted at the top of his throat. The shouting stopped abruptly. Then, he suddenly remembered that there was a pistol in the storage compartment of the armrest, but before he opened the cover of the armrest, he saw a black muzzle in front of him. The pistol in the armrest was held by the young man in the driver's seat, aiming at Lei Yangtze's forehead. Lei Yangtze suppressed the fear in his heart and tried to force out a calm smile. Did Zhijiang send you? It's not enough to scare me once. You want to come a second time. The other party ignored this presumptuous speculation and only asked a question. Where is Wang Yi? Lei Yangtze was stunned, and then he became more determined in his judgment. It must be Zhijiang's people. Now Zhijiang is probably the only one in the whole city who cares about that homeless man. Zhijiang has always been so annoying. He was one of the few thorns who stood on the opposite side of the upper class when he caused him to become an abandoned child. Now he actually wants to repeat the old thing. Question mark? After thinking about this clearly, Lei Yangtze suddenly felt that he had seen through the other party's strengths and weaknesses, and then took some initiative. He did not directly answer the other party's question, but asked, who is Wang Yi? If you want to find someone, you shouldn't ask me. I'm just an ordinary doctor. Looking at the calm face of the Dean of Nirvana, Sin sighed as expected, and then said, you are not an ordinary doctor. You know where Wang Yi is, and you will tell me honestly. While speaking, he quietly used a Jedi technique called touching the heart. This force skill can help him persuade and influence people with weak wills. Lei Yangtze's eyes were blurred, and he couldn't help but say, yes, I'm the Dean of Nirvana. Of course I know Wang Yi. He is hiding in Chiangsaen District 9, but sooner or later he will. Before he finished speaking, Lei Yangtze suddenly trembled all over. Cold sweat poured out like a spring, and his voice became trembling. He. The Jedi apprentice was surprised to read the strong fear from him, so that the effect of the mind-touching technique was forcibly interrupted. Lei Yangtze woke up in extreme fear and screamed, what did you do to me? I didn't say anything just now. Sin couldn't help but doubt in his heart, as the perpetrator, why did Lei Yangtze have to be so afraid of Wang Yi, the victim? Is there any terrifying secret hidden in Wang Yi? But now is not the time to explore the truth. Saving people is more important than anything else. So the Jedi apprentice patiently tried to use the force to alleviate the fear in Lei Yangtze's heart. Tell me where Wang Yi is. Chapter 140 Threat. Sin tried to use the force to ask for the truth again. However, this time, Lei Yangtze was completely unmoved. His mind was dominated by a strong fear, and he subconsciously resisted the topic about Wang Yi. Don't you want to know? Sin was silent for a while, feeling a little impatient and amused. His mind-touching technique was defeated by a mere fear. At the same time, he couldn't help but think of the man with a flat face, and his ears seemed to echo with that rampant laughter. If it was Ozzy, there would definitely be a way to make Lei Yangtze speak honestly. Of course, if it were Master Mostima, it would only do things better. The Jedi Master could easily dissolve Lei Yangtze's fear and then dig out the secret from behind the fear. Unfortunately, Scene is not a GD master, so he has no choice now. The next moment, the GD apprentice put the muzzle of the gun against Lei Yangtzen's head and repeated his question. Tell me, where is Wang Yi? This time, the GD apprentice's tone was no longer calm, and the threat of death spread to Lei Yangtzen's body along with the coldness of the metal muzzle. Lei Yangtzen shuddered. I don't know. Scene's finger gently rubbed the trigger. I really don't know. My subordinates won't let me know about this kind of thing. Because the less I know, the safer it is. Lei Yangtzen's explanation was very reasonable. When the upper class sent their subordinates to do dirty work, in order not to leave any handle, they would never give clear instructions or listen to detailed reports. Everything was done by the subordinates on their own. Once something went wrong, they could pretend not to know and only bear the responsibility for not strictly controlling their subordinates. This was an almost open unspoken rule, and Lei Yangtzen was just following the rules. But I can ask. Lei Yangtzen struggled. I just need to talk to them. In fact, I wanted to meet Wang Yi, so I need to use the communicator. Scene glanced at Lei Yangtzen and saw hatred and cunning in his eyes. So he did not agree to the other party's request for communication and only repeated his question. Where is Wang Yi? Lei Yangtzen showed an incredible expression. I said I don't know. You must at least give me a chance to talk to my men, and then I can tell you that Wang Yi is. Before he finished speaking, Scene suddenly reached out and took out a holographic photo from the storage compartment next to Lei Yangtzen's hand in the back seat. It was a young and beautiful girl. Scene did not know her, but from Lei Yangtzen's expression, it was easy to judge that there was a close connection between the two, and that was enough. Scene showed a cruel smile, tilted the muzzle of the gun, tilted it to the projection, and then pulled the trigger, turning the holographic photo into a bubble. Lei Yangtzen said in horror, this matter has nothing to do with her. So where is Wang Yi? I don't know. When Scene questioned, he was cautious not to use a mind control technique again, because he did not use this force technique to torture and hurt the other party. When the other party was already deeply in fear, using the mind control technique to add fuel to the flames would only increase the pain of the recipient and would not help to uncover the truth. Unfortunately, Lei Yangtzen was completely shrouded in fear and fell into chaos at this time. He curled up and rolled in his seat, and the wailing and cursing in his mouth intertwined, becoming incomprehensible. Scene gave him a few seconds to vent his pain, and then issued a final warning. Since you can't give a result, then you and her will be buried with Wang Yi together. I didn't let anyone kill him. Lei Yangtzen roared almost crazily. If you kill me, his daughter will be in danger. Scene couldn't help but sigh. Some people seem to be born to be evil, and they can make such a sharp counterattack when they are about to die. Lei Yangtzen was right. Even if Scene saved Wang Yi, if something happened to his daughter, Wang Yi would probably feel worse than death. But he only sighed a little. The next moment, the GD apprentice smiled coldly. Do you like to use children to threaten others? I wonder what the girl would think if she knew about this. Recalling the figure of the girl in the photo just now, Scene speculated softly, will she still be happy and relieved to raise a child in her belly? You? Lei Yangtzen even forgot the pain and trembling at this moment and raised his head in disbelief. Countless questions emerged in his mind. Who is this person? Why does he know everything about him? Why does he know that she is pregnant? And why does he dare to threaten the upper class in this way? But soon, these questions were swept away by the emotional fluctuations called fear. Under that cold smile, Lei Yangtzen felt that all his conspiracies and tricks turned into water, and his brain was stabbing, as if his thinking was frozen. Lei Yangtzen's psychological defenses collapsed, and he subconsciously said what he was thinking. Wang Yi should be in the Yangshan warehouse in Xianhuang District 3. That's where he and his friends often gather. I heard him brag about executing enemies there. Before he finished speaking, Lei Yangtzen felt the flying boat buzzing and then floated into the air. In the driver's seat, Scene had turned around, silently started the engine, and arranged automatic navigation. As the teardrop-shaped flying boat left the private club slowly, Lei Yangtzen in the back row of the flying boat gradually calmed down in tears. He tried to speak. I need a bandage. As he said that, he stretched out a bloody hand. That was the wound he scratched himself when he struggled in the back seat. Scene didn't make things difficult for him and threw the can of Bacta spray that he had found in the storage compartment of the flying boat to the back seat. Lei Yangsen said, "I can't bandage it by myself." Scene sneered and stretched out the muzzle of the gun. "Then don't waste it. Anyway, I already know Wang Yi's location, so I don't need you." Lei Yangsen's cold sweat suddenly poured out. "You must still need me. I can give you money." Before he finished speaking, Scene's finger lightly pressed on the trigger. Lei Yangsen screamed and covered his head and neck with his arms. "Don't kill me. I know. It's not a matter of money. I promise that I will never harass Wang Yi and his daughter again. He can take Wang Lu away if he wants. By the way, Kang Ji can also be given to him. Is that okay?" Scene sneered again, but this time he did not pull the trigger, but just moved the muzzle of the gun slightly away from Lei Yangsen's head. Lei Yangsen breathed a sigh of relief and honestly applied medicine to himself to heal his wounds. Chapter 141 Give Up Resistance. After simply dealing with the injury, Lei Yangsen continued to use his brain to come up with conditions that could better save his life. "I can also arrange for you to leave this city smoothly. After this incident, it is impossible for you and Wang Yi to stay in Li anymore. In fact, you are not a local at all, right? I'm afraid you are a local. You don't dare to attack me yet." Seeing that Scene didn't interrupt, Lei Yangsen continued, "After that, we can go back to Xianhuang district." "No, we need to go back to Xiangsuan district first, and then there is a secret road leading directly to the port. I can take you on board our Lei family's escape ship from the secret passage. That ship can enter and leave the defense circle freely without any extra certification. It has internally stored routes to multiple surrounding planets, even when necessary. It's time to escape from the Khan galaxy." When Scene heard this, his heartbeat began to accelerate slightly. Lei Yangsen was indeed somewhat smart, and he completely understood the current needs of the Jedi apprentices, and the escape route he mentioned did not sound like a lie. For this Dean, it is in his interest to send the evil star as far away as possible. Therefore, the harvest from this operation seems to be richer than expected. "Originally, I just wanted to save people, but now I have even found a way out." But Scene quickly rejected this blindly optimistic plan. Every word Lei Yangsen said was just empty talk. Until he actually fulfills his promise, he cannot have too high expectations for the future. But in any case, Lei Yangsen did point out a way forward. "Before getting more information, let's move forward along this path." Scene made a rational judgment in his heart, but still did not completely remove the muzzle of the gun. He must maintain the suppression of Lei Yangsen at all times and let the brand of fear firmly envelope his heart. For this extremely cunning opponent, even tying him up with ropes may not be effective. Only fear can overwhelm all conspiracies and tricks and make him become honest. Thinking of this, Scene felt helpless. Controlling the enemy with fear is definitely not the right way, but more like the way of darkness. It is a despicable trick that only perverted murderers like Xiaozi are happy to use. In fact, when Scene was trying to subdue Lei Yangsen with the mind-touching technique just now, Xiaozi's face could not help but appear in his mind, and he imitated his words and demeanor. But it is undeniable that this method is really useful. A despicable and cunning upper-class man relied on fear to resist the mind-touching technique, but was defeated by a greater fear. If he hadn't relied on this trick, Scene didn't know how long he would have been dealing with him. All this is for the purpose of justice. Even if the means are a little extreme, it is better than sitting back and watching the tragedy happen for the sake of justice. Justice is not self-satisfaction, but a necessary trade-off. Scene convinced himself silently and forced the instinctive disgust in my heart. Everything he has done is incompatible with the teachings he has received and the habits he has developed over the past 10 years, but the situation he is currently facing is also a dilemma he has never faced before. In extraordinary times, extraordinary things should be done. Even if you really made a mistake, you should reflect on the lesson afterwards. At this moment, Lei Yangsen said again, "Don't drive directly to Xianhuang district, it will be very conspicuous. I suggest you make a transfer in Xiangsuan district 4 or 5. Scene ignored the other party's advice. Instead, he pointed the gun at Lei Yangsen again. Lei Yangtze smiled bitterly and said, I'm not playing tricks, I just want to save my life. My airship is really conspicuous, and almost everyone in Chiangsaen district knows that the Lei family's luxury airships rarely fly to places where civilians live. The place. A few days ago, Kang Ji went to District 7 to pick up Wang Lu, which caused a lot of discussion. You drove directly to Xianhuang district, which is a clear indication that there is something wrong with the airship. Xin remained unmoved. When the time comes, not only the Lei family, but also the entire upper class circle of Li will be alarmed, and it will be difficult for you to escape. Zio said with a smile, then you will be buried together and die with your love rival's family. Isn't it also very romantic? These words made Lei Yangtze's hair stand on end. You are really crazy. Xin continued to instill fear with laughter, and his fingers kept making crisp sounds on the trigger, as if the fatal energy beam would be activated at any time to take away Lei Yangtze's life. People can be crazy, but guns can't. By the way, I will not be buried with you. I will only find your home and send everything you cherish to be with you. Don't question whether I can do it. That's enough. What can you do if you force me to death? Lei Yangtze wailed almost hysterically. I have given you all the conditions I can offer, and there is nothing better if you kill me. Conditions? Really? Then I won't be polite. Then Xin really pulled the trigger. An energy beam rubbed Lei Yangtze's cheek and sank into the seat in the back of the airship. Lei Yangtze's mind went blank. He was in a daze for a long time before he realized that he was still alive, and wandering between life and death again made him completely lose all courage to resist. After choosing to give in, Lei Yangtze's mind became clearer. He said in a deep voice, I understand. Let's lower the height of the airship first. Cruise along the low altitude, starting from the 3rd and 4th areas, and then to turn into the Xianhuang district. When you reach the 7th district, it will be less likely to be misunderstood. Okay. Xin smiled and lowered the height of the airship. Lei Yangtze was silent for a moment and then explained, I have walked this path twice before. Sometimes after a private banquet, when I'm chatting with guests, and it is inconvenient to go to a specific place, I will go in circles like this. Of course, under normal circumstances, we will not go into the Xianhuang district, but if we travel on this trajectory, even if the route suddenly deviates, at least it will not cause too much vigilance. But when you arrive in the Xianhuang district, you must move quickly. Heezy and the others will definitely ask when they see me coming. If I don't respond, they will think too much. Sean said, just tell them to stay away now, and don't get in the way. The communicator was thrown into the back row. Lei Yangtze was startled and looked at the communicator on his leg in disbelief. With this communicator, he has many opportunities to ask for help from the outside world, and the young killer in front of him actually gave him this opportunity. This is Xin's gun aimed again. What are you waiting for? Give instructions to your private soldiers quickly. The Jedi apprentice was not worried at all that Lei Yangtze dared to play tricks. After a few rounds after the confrontation, the other party's cunning and despicableness have been firmly bound by fear, and they no longer have the ability to resist. Lei Yangtze didn't know that his falsehood had been completely seen through. He swallowed, nodded vigorously, then picked up the communicator and contacted the familiar subordinate. Heezy, it's me. A flattering voice came from the communicator. Master Lei, what are your orders? I have already taken care of the previous matters. Lei Yangtze felt his scalp numb for a while. Proper, how appropriate it was. He really didn't dare to think about it. Chapter 142, Area 3. Lei Yangtze knew that something was wrong, but he could only bite the bullet and continue the conversation. He said to Heezy, let's not talk about that matter for now. I have a new task for you. Go and open the yellow road. Ah, what? Don't you know how to open the yellow road? But why at this time? Does the master know? Does he know that it's your turn to care? Lei Yangtze scolded softly. As usual, he would shout when he was angry, but at this time, his physical exhaustion made it difficult for him to make a full voice. However, this slow and leisurely speech had a stronger pressure, and there was no doubt on the other end of the communicator. Yes, I will open the yellow road now. Try to keep it secret from others, including my father and others. Don't forget who pays you. Yes, sir. After turning off the communicator, Lei Yangson looked at the slightly moved muzzle of the gun and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He really didn't play any tricks. During the whole conversation, he didn't say any code words for help and emergency, and even asked them to help conceal it. Lei Yangson really gave up all resistance and shifted his position to the other side. Compared with the fear that was always there, he would rather go with the flow and let others do whatever they wanted. It was easier that way. At the same time, Sin also felt relieved. If Lei Yangson was willing to cooperate sincerely, the next escape would be half successful. It was worth his hard work to play a role that made him sick. Soon, the teardrop-shaped flying boat moved from the low-altitude area of Xiangsuan to the Xianhuang area. Although it was also a large area with the word Xian, the status of Xianhuang was far inferior to that of Xiangsuan. The space divided into 5 large areas was filled with the middle and lower class residents of this city. There are neither large companies with strong assets nor social elites who consider themselves upper class. According to the guide information, Xianhuang district is the real civilian world in this city. However, unlike the fireworks in Xiangsuan District 7 and District 8, Xianhuang district gives people a much darker feeling. Sin frowned almost the moment the flying boat crossed the boundary line of the area. The light above his head was obviously dim. It was not yet the night time of Li, but the energy from Bazhao seemed reluctant to continue to give light to Xianhuang district, covering the night in advance. At the same time, Sin could clearly feel a breath of decadence. This is completely different from the guide information. He observed carefully and found that the buildings in Xianhuang district were obviously dilapidated. Unlike the dilapidated buildings in Xiangsuan District 9 due to abandonment, even the buildings that were put into use here often showed mottled rust and were covered with heavy dust everywhere. The pedestrians on the street seemed stiff and wooden. Not just one or two, but almost all of them showed the same temperament, without the vibrant feeling of food is heaven. In theory, the Xianhuang District 1, which is adjacent to the Xiangsuan District, is already the most prosperous area in the Xianhuang District. However, now is not the time to investigate the ecology of the Xianhuang District. Sin remained calm, just gently shaking his body and posing a relaxed attitude. Behind him, Lei Yangson couldn't help but say, District 1 is fine. There may be some unexpected situations in District 3. There are rarely luxury flying boats there, and some people may not be able to resist. Sin smiled and shook the pistol in his hand casually. What if they can't resist? I don't know. He never let me come here. He said that this is a paradise for the lower class, especially the order in District 3 is particularly chaotic. Even they, after being hired by the Lei family, will not come back often. So, no matter what you want to do later, please do it as soon as possible. Please do it as soon as possible. Well said, I remember it. Not long after, Xianhuang District 3 was already in sight. Thanks to the excellent performance of the teardrop-shaped flying boat, when Sin gave up keeping a low profile and chose to go at full speed, the engine at the tail suddenly burst out amazing energy, pushing the flying boat to the destination of this trip at an incredible speed. It was a dilapidated warehouse area, and various 3-dimensional buildings filled the entire space. The dim light from the top of the head could hardly penetrate the layers of 3-dimensional buildings. From the bottom, it seemed like a dark steel forest, and the forest was inhabited by evil beasts. When the flying boat approached, relying on the light brought by the tail flame, Sin could clearly see that in the storage area, most of the warehouses did not store any goods. They opened their doors, revealing the empty interior, as if inviting people to come in and take a look, or as if it was an open trap, waiting for the prey to fall into the trap. This place filled with an ominous atmosphere made the Jedi apprentice feel a little nervous. Not for himself, but for the doctor who was forcibly brought here. Wan Yi, is it here? At this time, Lei Yangson suggested, which warehouse is Wan Yi in? I can ask Heezy again. Sin raised his hand to stop him from making his own decision. There is no need for that. Talking too much will only cause unexpected trouble. Finding someone is actually very simple. Sin said, and pushed the control suddenly. The teardrop-shaped flying boat fell down rapidly. In the low cry of Lei Yangson, it rushed to the door of a small warehouse. It was a square warehouse standing on the ground floor. Through the glass window on the top, you can see the swaying lights and hazy figures. Obviously, someone is treating it as their home. The flying boat went all the way down, and then turned to stop suddenly. Before it stopped, SYN had rolled down the glass window beside him, stretched out his pistol, and pulled the trigger 3 times in a row, letting 3 energy beams shoot out, leaving 3 equidistant perforations on the half-open door of the warehouse. In the middle of the perforation, stood a trembling boy. He was wearing loose clothes, and holding a worn-out blaster in his hand. As a gatekeeper, his face was full of fear. SYN suppressed his discomfort, and showed a cold smile to the young man. Question 1. I just fired 3 shots. Where should the 4th shot be fired? Question 2. Where is the middle-aged homeless man who was brought here from Shiangsuan district not long ago? After saying that, SYN had already aimed the muzzle of the gun at the forehead of the young man. At this time, there was a faint commotion inside the warehouse, but SYN was unmoved. He just counted down with that cruel smile. 3, 2. Before he finished counting down, the trembling boy finally pointed his finger at a lonely building in the air in the distance. The next moment, SYN immediately pulled up the joystick, making the teardrop-shaped flying boat vertically upward, rushing like lightning. Almost at the same time, a storm of energy beams burst out from the warehouse, narrowly brushing the tail flame of the flying boat. It's really not a place suitable for the upper class and dignitaries to visit. SYN forced himself to continue to maintain a twisted smile and ignore the commotion behind him. The flying boat arrived at the destination at an extremely fast speed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Irreversible. This small warehouse in midair, with its back against a giant pillar, looked like a knot growing horizontally on a branch. The only door of the warehouse was set to the outside, and it was now closed, refusing anyone to enter or leave. SYN's solution to this was to fire 5 shots in a row, allowing the energy beam to melt the door lock just right, and then push open the door of the flying boat and kick it out hard. The door of the warehouse groaned and fell, revealing the darkness inside. SYN jumped into the flying boat without fear, and then lit a flash stick. The white light filled the entire space in an instant. In the corner, SYN saw the target of his trip as expected. Wang Yi was lying softly in the corner of the warehouse, with mottled bloodstains all over his tattered clothes. He lowered his head, making it difficult to see his face, but the moment he saw his figure, SYN felt that his mind was falling down at an alarming speed. At this moment, he even hated his keen 5 senses. Even with the dim light from the flash stick, he could clearly see that the man in the corner had completely lost his breath, and his blood-stained chest showed no signs of moving. SYN stood there, a little confused for a moment. After he received the revelation of the Force, he rushed all the way here unstoppably, just to save Wang Yi. During this period, he did not hesitate to imitate and play a perverted killer, and did not hesitate to violate the rules he had believed in for many years, forcing himself to believe that all this was for greater justice. But now, justice is dead. So, what should I do next? SYN tried to think, but no matter how hard he tried, there seemed to be a strong repulsive force in his brain, preventing him from thinking further. It didn't matter what he did next, so even if he didn't do anything. In silence, there was another person beside SYN. Lei Yangsan walked to SYN's side with trembling hands. Although SYN didn't ask him to follow, and although when SYN was silent, he had every opportunity to climb into the driver's seat and drive away. But the only thought in his mind, which was completely eroded by fear, was to follow SYN no matter what. It seemed that only by following and obeying this young perverted killer could he get real safety, and any other distractions would only lead to death. SYN glanced at Lei Yangsan, who had been successfully tamed by him, but he no longer had the will to maintain a sneer. Even if he continued to play the perverted killer, he could not bring the dead back to life. So let's stop here. In SYN's silence, Lei Yangsan gradually felt something was wrong. He forced a smile and said, "Well, I think we have found Wang Yi. He is over there. Look, he is sleeping." After that, Lei Yangtze took the initiative to jog forward, not caring that the bumps would touch the wound and make him sweat in pain. After dozens of steps, Lei Yangtze finally came to Wang Yi. He trembled for a long time, looked at the cold body on the ground in disbelief, knelt down with a thud, and then uttered a sharp groan. "No, it's impossible. I didn't let anyone kill you." At this time, Sin also walked over quietly. Although he knew very well that, even if he got closer, the obvious facts would not change, the dead could not be resurrected, and time could not be reversed, but Sin just subconsciously wanted to see Wang Yi's expression when he died. Could that always positive and optimistic person still smile at the end of his life? Sin knelt on one knee, gently lifted up Wang Yi's head, and then saw his smiling face as expected. Even though he was bleeding from all 7 orifices, and it was obvious that he had suffered great pain before his death, he still did not lose his optimism. Sin was a little confused and a little relieved. After a moment, he couldn't help but chuckle. Wang Yi was really an incredible person. Even after death, he could still infect others with his optimism. Sin suddenly felt that the confusion in his heart had been swept away. This rescue was indeed a failure, but what if it failed? The road under his feet was still there, so he had to keep going. After becoming a homeless man, Wang Yi still treated every day with optimism and positivity. He settled down in District 9, enjoyed delicious food at Food for Heaven, and watched his daughter grow up silently. And Sin just needed to regroup. After thinking it through, Sin made a decision, but before he could speak, Lei Yangtze beside him had already hit his head on the ground with a thump. "Mercy. Please spare my life. I really didn't let anyone kill him." Sin smiled, raised his hand to flip Lei Yangtze up, and then asked, "Then you asked your men to kidnap Wang Yi to entertain him?" Lei Yangtze said, I just asked Heezy and the others to teach him a lesson. I did think about killing him when I was angry, but it was just a thought. The plan for his disposal was jointly decided by the High Council 5 years ago. How dare I overturn it casually? Sin couldn't help but become suspicious when he heard this. The High Council jointly decided? Is it necessary to alarm the High Council for a medical accident? Lei Yangtze didn't doubt him and explained with a wry smile. Of course it wasn't a medical accident. Ma Wanli was strangled to death on the hospital bed. Wang Yi was severely punished later, not because he saved someone he shouldn't have saved, but because he tried to learn secrets he shouldn't have known. Sin asked, "Oh, you mean that unknown poison? Poison? Does Wang Yi understand it that way?" Lei Yangtze was also a little surprised, and then sighed. This is indeed like his style. Haha. At this point, Lei Yangtze actually laughed with some relief. He regarded the Zhuanghuang blood that everyone regarded as a treasure as a poison. It's a pity that he is a celebrity doctor. Zhuanghuang blood. A flash of inspiration flashed through Sin's mind. In the UI 4399, no, it was in this space city that he first heard this word. The thieves organization called Jadrat had the audacity to steal the silver supplies for the sake of someone who promised the Rat King the Zhuanghuang blood, the elixir of life. Immortality? Lei Yangtze sneered. There is no such thing as real immortality. Zhuanghuang blood has been circulated among the top executives of Kyankan Group for at least several centuries, but no director has been able to remain immortal for hundreds of years. Instead, it is not uncommon for people to die tragically due to various accidents. Nirvana alone has received no less than 10 people. So why do people use it? Lei Yangtze said, although it can't make people immortal, it seems that the effect of prolonging life is undoubted. It is said that some senior executives of the board of directors have survived for more than 200 years. And just based on some of the physical data of senior executives mastered by Nirvana, there are indeed many people who have inexplicably ushered in a wave of new life when their energy is exhausted. Sin was even more puzzled after hearing this. What exactly is Zhuanghuang blood? I don't know. Lei Yangtze replied softly, I don't want to know. The more you know about some things, the closer you are to death. Chapter 144 A Difference in Thought. Lei Yangtze's answer made Sin frown. Don't you claim to be from the upper class? Lei Yangtze said bitterly, not yet. If I could join the group's board of directors, or come from one of the 4 major families, I might be qualified to know a thing or two. But the Lei family is still far from it. The Lei family has been operating, nirvana, for more than 400 years, and each generation of our heirs will tell their descendants not to explore the secrets of Zhuanghuang blood. This incredible mysticism made Xin feel more and more strange. Faintly, Xin seemed to see a line that was vague, but could connect many things. The death of Ma Wanli 5 years ago, the death of Wang Yi now, and then the death of Nanheli, and even. Xin's thoughts spread at a very fast speed. Countless fragments flashed in his mind, and he felt that he would soon grasp the truth. But at this moment, a rapid ring interrupted his thinking. Lei Yangxin was also startled, his body trembled, and he dropped the communicator on his chest to the ground. Xin picked up the communicator, and then heard Hee's voice. "Boss, the yellow road has been opened." At this time, Lei Yangxin didn't care about the yellow road at all. He suddenly leaned in front of the communicator and asked sternly, "Who told you to kill Wang Yi?" Huh? The person on the other side of the communicator was confused by the question. "Boss, what are you talking about? These words are not convenient to say in the communicator. I asked who told you to kill Wang Yi." "No one told us to kill Wang Yi. You told us to teach him a lesson, so we caught him, beat him up, and locked him in the warehouse, planning to let him go after starving him for 2 or 3 days. The brothers were very measured in their actions, and not even a bone was broken." Xin listened and reached out to confirm Wang Yi's body. Indeed, although Wang Yi was dead, he did not suffer any serious external injuries, which matched Hee's statement. "Boss, what happened? Someone wants to kill Wang Yi." "No way, I don't think he is the kind of person who can offend others. To be honest, I actually admire him." "Enough." Lei Yangxin also frowned, muttered a few words, and then asked, "Besides you, who else can come into this warehouse?" No one. That was originally a place for the brothers to do private work. It's neither up nor down, and it's very inconvenient to go in and out. We never put anything in there, and we have greeted the people around us, so no one will barge in." "Wait, boss, why do you say that someone went in and killed Wang Yi?" Lei Yangxin was already gritting his teeth in hatred, and reached out to turn off the communicator. He turned his head and looked at Xin. "This is all a conspiracy. Someone has been plotting against me from the beginning. Over the years, I never knew that Wang Yi would hide in Food is Heaven to spy on Wang Lu, and I didn't know that Kang Ji still had feelings for him. But someone told me today. I asked my men to teach Wang Yi a lesson, and never hinted at killing someone, but Wang Yi died here." Xin's heart was moved when he heard this. Lei Yangxin's words cannot be fully believed, but there is something strange here. Wang Yi has been traveling back and forth between District 7 and District 9 for the past 5 years, and he has never made any mistakes. But this time he was blocked by the victim, and suffered a fatal disaster. It is difficult to explain it with the word coincidence. Lei Yangxin may not have no intention of killing Wang Yi, but he is probably just a chess piece that can be manipulated by others in this matter. Of course, he who held Lei Yangxin hostage with a gun is also a chess piece. There is only one person who can be called a chess player on this chessboard. Xin's mind naturally emerged with that flat face. Without any evidence or reasoning, Xin has already locked on the real culprit behind the scenes. Then there is a sense of urgency. If the real culprit behind the scenes is Zazi, then from now on, he must not be careless at all. Even after many days, the confrontation with him on the giant camel-shaped cargo ship still makes people's hair stand on end when they recall it. It was a pity that he failed to eliminate the root of the problem on the spot when the cargo ship crashed into District 9. But now is not the time to regret. We must consider the next step. Xin pondered for a few seconds and made a decision. He patted Lei Yangxin on the shoulder. "Okay, then you go home first and find out the real culprit behind the scenes." Lei Yangxin was extremely surprised. "Go home? You want to let me go back?" Xin smiled. "2 things. First, find out the real culprit. Second, take good care of Wang Yi's relatives." Lei Yangxin was a little angry at the time. "What do you mean by Wang Yi's relatives?" Exclamation mark. "Those are my relatives." He had lost interest in Kangji a long time ago, let alone family affection, but this was after all related to the dignity of the upper class. But the greater surprise dispelled the mere anger, because he heard the hidden meaning of Seen's words. "You won't come with me?" Seen shook his head. "There are still two things. First, I have to stay here to investigate clues. Second, whether you go home or not, it makes no difference to me. I can catch you in the club, and of course I can catch you anywhere else, and everyone around you." Lei Yangtzen's mouth twitched, and the delusion that had just risen in his heart disappeared. "Okay, then I'll go back and find out who designed to frame me." After saying that, Lei Yangtzen did not hesitate and ran impatiently to the flying boat, parked by the door. However, he didn't run 2 steps and heard a hurried voice behind him. "Wait, stop." Lei Yangtzen subconsciously wanted to obey the order, but he gritted his teeth and pretended not to hear it, speeding forward. If he ran a few more steps, he could get on the flying boat and get away. If he stopped at this time, wouldn't he continue to be bullied? The fear in his heart was still there, but because of the fear, he didn't dare to let go of this only chance to escape. Everyone was a pawn in someone's plan. Lei Yangtzen really didn't believe that the man would kill him at this time. However, at this moment, the flying boat in front of him suddenly burst into a dazzling light, which was so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. He subconsciously closed his eyes, but then he heard a deafening explosion, and his body seemed to be pierced by thousands of needles. Lei Yangtzen's world was shattered at this moment. Chapter 145. Damn. Seen watched Lei Yangtzen die tragically in front of him, and he couldn't help but grit his teeth secretly. A momentary failure, the price is so painful. This is really a great lesson. When Seen realized that this place was dangerous and the risk was mainly due to Lei Yangtzen, in fact, everything was still in time. As long as Lei Yangtzen stood on the spot, Seen could just grab him and hide in a blind spot before the fragments of the explosion flew over and escaped. But Lei Yangtzen, after being cowardly all the way, stood up at the most critical moment. Just this time, he lost his life. Seen did not regret his death, but only regretted his carelessness. Because he witnessed Wang Yi's death, Seen was confused, and for a while he gave up suppressing his fear of Lei Yangtzen, which made him have the idea of resistance that he should not have. Otherwise, with Lei Yangtzen's courage and character, how dare he continue to move forward when Seen shouted to stop? So Seen also deeply understood a truth. Things must be done from beginning to end, even if you are playing a villain and doing evil things. But now is not the time to reminisce about the past. Lei Yangtzen is dead, but things have just begun. When Lei Yangtzen died, he saw the details of the explosion of the flying boat with his own eyes. The flying boat was blown up by a long-range missile, and the explosion was extremely accurate and tricky. The power of the explosion itself was mediocre, but the strong light, loud noise, and fragments that burst out during the explosion were deadly weapons, and most of the fragments were concentrated on this side of the warehouse, as if they had been calculated with great precision. This could not be a coincidence, nor did it seem to be the work of the refugees around. It was difficult for ordinary refugees to hold heavy weapons, let alone use them so skillfully. So it is more likely that these are the skilled workers that Xiaozi ambushed here in advance, that is, professional mercenaries, and these skilled workers are undoubtedly a great threat. Seen stood in the corner of the warehouse, quickly calculating the next action plan in his mind. Being blocked in the warehouse with heavy weapons, his situation was precarious. Although this warehouse was made of heavy alloy, it was not safe in the face of heavy weapons. Besides, since the enemy could ambush him in the warehouse, they would naturally prepare powerful weapons to attack. So Seen had to break out as soon as possible, but the warehouse had only one entrance and exit, and it was located in the air. Now the only means of transportation was destroyed, so it was not easy to escape. Seen looked down at his feet, and his right hand could not help but touch his waist, but it was empty. If the Jedi's lightsaber was still there, he could use it to cut an escape route in this warehouse. Although this warehouse was high, it would not be difficult for the Jedi apprentice who had been prepared. Although the nearby warehouse area was dangerous, it was easier for people to fish in troubled waters. Unfortunately, the lightsaber was gone, so this escape route was blocked. So, Scene looked at the still open door and realized that he had no choice. The next moment, the Jedi apprentice strode out of the warehouse. However, there was no rain of bullets outside the door as he expected, or rather, although there was rain of bullets, they were not aimed at him. What came into view was a fierce melee. The colorful energy beams dyed this warehouse area with mottled light and shadows with a gloomy ghostly atmosphere. The explosions and screams continued to stir in the complex space. However, the two sides of the war were wearing the same sophisticated armor and using the same blaster. They were even hiding in the same hidden position. These elite warriors from Kyankan security were killing each other at close range face to face. Scene was in midair and couldn't help but stare wide-eyed. What is going on? At the same time, in a dilapidated office in Shiangsuan District 1, the lights were dim, reflecting a silver metal rod being tossed up and down by someone, like a toy. There was a button on the metal rod, which rubbed against a thumb from time to time during the tossing, but after jumping up and down for a long time, the finger never pressed it down. Because Xia Jiang knew very well that after pressing it, some contradictions could not be avoided. Although the conflict has always been brewing, it is only a matter of time before it breaks out. Just as Xia Jiang was lost in thought, the impatient voice of his companion came from beside him. "Boss, you are already old. Don't you get tired of playing with sticks for a few days? Besides, no matter how much you like playing with sticks, don't drag us. We don't have sticks to play with." Xia Jiang glared at the two laser brains and couldn't help but lament in his heart. After all, he is a poor man. Although he has the surname Xia, he has been excluded all the way, and he can't even be a captain of the security squadron. He has been operating in Li for so long, and he should have become a powerful person long ago, but the newcomers sent by his superiors are either trash or idiots. Xia Jiang worked hard, but he only trained a useful deputy, and the rest of the people still looked like they were brainwashed or missing strings. It would be okay to rely on these people to fight and maintain basic public order, but if you want to use them as a team to operate a force in Li, that's kidding yourself. Of course, Xia Jiang has no intention of operating a force at all. However, there are also advantages to being useless, since there are so many useless people under him. Let those capable people deal with the recent changes in Li, and he and his useless people should just stay at home and play with sticks. Anyway, he has already given the necessary warnings, and if there are any more problems. However, when Xia Jiang was thinking about this, he suddenly felt a chill on his back, as if something extremely ominous was approaching. Xia Jiang immediately put away the metal rod in his hand, then stood up, aimed his eyes at the broken window of the office, and raised the muzzle of his gun without hesitation. At the same time, the shadow of the window squirmed and turned into a human figure. The man was dressed in black, and his presence was particularly weak in the dimly lit office, but the flat and pale face was extremely eye-catching, as if floating in the air. It was the agent of the Security Bureau, the director's younger brother, Xiaozi. Several security soldiers who were sitting awkwardly were shocked and fell off their chairs on the spot, but no matter how embarrassed they were, everyone in the office drew their guns in just 2 seconds and pointed them at Xiaozi. They lack vigilance, but they are well trained. It must be a lot of effort for the squadron leader to grind a bunch of losers to this point. Xiaozi made a gentle comment, but then changed the subject. It's a pity that no matter how hard you try to protect these losers, Xia Jiang, those who deserve to die will still die. Chapter 146 Dead. The security guards, who were ridiculed as useless, were furious and kept scolding, but their actions stopped there. Captain Xia Jiang did not speak, and none of them dared to pull the trigger. Xia Jiang was not angry, but asked, "Now, Li is well guarded by Captain Zhao's elite. How could we, who are honest and guarding the house, die?" On the day when the cargo ship carrying Scene crashed into District 9, Xia Jiang led the crowd to maintain public order, but soon after, the public order of the whole city was taken over by a group of security soldiers who were airborne. These people were not many in number, but their ranks were terrifyingly high. The captain named Zhao Xiang led 2 fully staffed special operations teams, fully armed and majestic. This made the locals who were used to seeing Xia Jiang's squadron particularly uncomfortable. The name of Kyankan security has never been important in Lee, and the city's public order is actually maintained by the private soldiers of the upper class dignitaries. But at any time, a captain and 2 special operations teams of Kyankan security have absolute weight. However, this batch of absolutely important reinforcement had a bad relationship with Zhejiang, so the arrival of these people not only did not bring any benefits to Zhejiang, but also marginalized him. In the past few days, Zhejiang simply led the team to rest at home, and even skipped the routine patrol mission. Unexpectedly, even with such a low profile, he was still approached. Zhejiang really didn't want to get involved in things related to the Jedi apprentice, so he would rather suffer a loss of face and still use Zhao Ziang as a shield. Zai smiled when he heard this, and this smile immediately made everyone feel chilled. Zhao Ziang will soon become a dead man. You expect a dead man to take care of Li? Zhejiang was shocked when he heard this. Dead man? How could he die? 2 full special forces, more than 100 elite soldiers. This is an absolutely important force in Li. Although Zhao Ziang's style of behavior is radical, he is a veteran who has been on the battlefield after all. How could he die easily? It's common to die on the battlefield when you go to the front line to capture the wanted criminals. Zhejiang thought it was ridiculous. Would you die if you go to the front line? Not to mention that Zhao Ziang himself was an extremely experienced soldier. Were those battle-hardened guards around him just for show? But Zai changed the subject and chuckled. Especially since his guards were bribed by me, I can kill him with a bullet in the back when the battle comes. Zhejiang felt his scalp tingling, and then he was furious. You were the one who called him to Li, and now you want to kill him. The plain man laughed and said, why are you angry? Zhao Ziang has been a soldier and a bandit for 20 years, causing trouble in all directions. He has killed countless innocent lives. He deserves to die 10 times. I remember you tried your best to complain to the top management back then. However, he was determined to be a dog for the Zhao family, and the board of directors kept him alive despite the public outrage, and even let him get promoted step by step. Now I'm getting rid of this harm for the people. You should cheer for me. Zhejiang's face twitched. What the other party said was right. With what Zhao Ziang had done, it was not an exaggeration to say that he deserved to die. There were countless people in the entire Kyan galaxy who were looking forward to his sudden death day and night. However, when Zai said that he was eliminating harm for the people, it was not a happy thing at all. Zai said with a smile, why do you look so gloomy? From your point of view, you should be more happy than anyone else to see Zhao Ziang die. If Zhao Ziang had not betrayed you shamelessly, your relatives and friends would not have been trapped in a desperate situation and ignored. In the end, only the remnants of the Red Apricot Squad were left to die. Could it be that more than 10 years have passed, and you have forgotten the blood feud with your comrades? Zhejiang was speechless by the questioning. The resentment and helplessness of the past emerged in his mind, followed by guilt. More than 10 years have passed, and his hatred has indeed faded a lot, and he no longer has the courage to rush to the security bureau regardless of everything. Or maybe he never had such courage, so when the survivors resolutely separated from the Kyankan group, he still stayed. Or maybe his comrades in arms saw through his weakness and chose to part ways with him silently. However, thinking about this, Zhejiang felt inexplicably uncomfortable. There were indeed countless regrets about what happened back then, but why should he feel guilty about it? After all, he, Zhejiang, was also a victim back then, and this despicable and shameless plain person was the perpetrator. The high level betrayed them, the frontline fighters, and Zai also contributed a lot. However, before Zhejiang angrily refuted, Zai said again, or, you can't tolerate Zhao Ziang's death in the hands of others, and you must personally avenge your comrades? Don't worry, everyone who knew about it back then knew that Zhao Ziang had a mortal feud with you. He died in Li, and everyone would suspect that you were the one who did it. Zhejiang's chest was choked up, and he felt like vomiting blood. This damn plain person. After killing someone, he still wants to frame him. Zai said, it's effortless. You can avenge your blood feud by sitting quietly at home. Such good things are rare in the world. Captain, remember to thank me next time you go to commemorate your deceased comrades. Zha Jiang glared at the other party and thought to himself, I'll thank your whole family. But Zha Zi seemed to see through the other party's thoughts and laughed, but don't thank my whole family. After all, we are essentially a family. Thanking the whole family may cause accidental injuries. Zha Jiang finally couldn't help but curse, if I can't kill Zhao Ziang, I can at least kill you. As he spoke, the muzzle of the gun stretched forward. Zha Zi spread his hands nonchalantly. Okay, kill Captain Zhao Ziang first, and then kill Agent Zha Zi. Captain, you have been dormant in Li for many years, and finally you can make a splash. The current star system hasn't produced such an orthodox rebel for many years. The news media must be overjoyed. After all, you and your men will go down in history with this rebellion. Zha Jiang suddenly felt that the arm holding the gun seemed to weigh a lot of pounds. Indeed, he almost forgot that Zha Zi was also an agent of the Security Bureau and the brother of Director Zha Yan. It was fine to be framed and murdered Zhao Ziang. Zhao Ziang had been doing evil for many years, and he wished that his death could go around. For 2.5 weeks, Zha Jiang could always find a reason to deal with it. At most, he would be fired and start as a soldier, which was not a big deal for him. But the significance of killing Zha Zi was different. Although Zha Zi had done many evil things, he was not well known. Very few people knew this perverted murderer. Once he died in Li, especially in his own office, Zha Jiang would really have a hard time defending himself. At that time, it didn't matter what happened to him, Zha Jiang, but these brothers who had been with him for many years. Thinking of this, Zha Jiang couldn't help but feel annoyed. Chapter 147 Ambush. Zha Jiang couldn't help but recall the past. Back then, or rather, he had always been like this. Whenever he wanted to make up his mind to perish together, there would always be more concerns around him that he couldn't let go. Zha Zi's voice continued to come slowly. Don't forget, Zhao Ziang was assassinated while performing a mission. Considering the relationship between that person and you, the people on the board should think that you have been neglected for many years, and finally you can't bear the loneliness, and boarded the big ship of the Republic. Zha Jiang felt even more headache after hearing this, and unknowingly put down the gun in his hand. Everything seemed to be a replica of the past. Facing an opponent who deserved to die, Zha Jiang couldn't do it anyway. So, are you here to show off? No, I'm here to remind you that after Zhao Ziang's death, the job of arresting people will fall on you. Zha Jiang responded stiffly. We are a group of mediocre people. I'm afraid it's difficult to take on such a heavy responsibility. He was determined not to participate in this matter, and would rather bear the risk of dereliction of duty than play with sticks in the office. Zha Zi sneered. You want to stay out of it? The squadron leader is so innocent at his age. No wonder his teammates suffered heavy casualties back then, and he was spurned by his friends afterwards. An ignorant child like you is not welcome anywhere. Zha Jiang was numb after being repeatedly exposed. Get out of here after being laughed at. I want to remind you that after Zhao Ziang's death, it is your responsibility to avenge Lei Yangsen. Zha Jiang was shocked when he heard it. Revenge for Lei Yangsen? What happened to him? He was kidnapped by a fugitive and unfortunately died. Zha Jiang was even more unbelievable. Not long ago, he had just warned Lei Yangsen to be careful. As a result, not long after, he was kidnapped and died. Question mark? But then he realized that it was precisely because he had just come into contact with him not long ago that he was really responsible for Lei Yangsen's death. Moreover, unlike Zhao Ziang, the outsider, Lei Yangsen was a typical local dignitary. His status as the president of Nirvana allowed him to have close contacts with the members of the group's board of directors. If he died, the entire management of Li would be in turmoil, and Lei Yangsen died at the hands of that fugitive. Even if Zha Jiang had 10 mouths, he would never be able to explain it clearly. Moreover, he was indeed guilty about this matter, and could not explain it at all. With Zha Jiang's means, if he really wanted to search the Xiangsa 9 districts with all his strength that day, no one would be able to escape. However, he only sent his deputy Liuming, and Liuming was a man of knowledge. When he received the assignment, he knew that his superior had no intention of conducting a thorough investigation, so he just pretended to do it, and even left a way out for the fugitive. As long as he was not too stupid, he would be able to escape. If he was really too stupid, there was nothing he could do. He would catch him earlier and get it over with earlier. Letting a laser brain run around and being caught by someone would be disadvantageous to his own people. As it turned out, the fugitive was smart and easily escaped from the encirclement. He has been missing since then. Xia Jiang thought that, if he delayed for a while, the man would find a chance to leave, but he dared to kidnap and kill people in the city. Question mark? Xia Zi said in a soft and slow voice with a disgusting tone. Are you surprised, Captain? I remember that the Security Bureau said during the loyalty education that it is the most dangerous to make friends with the rebels. Even if you don't have a rebellious heart, they will sooner or later make you a rebel. The captain was able to make up his mind to cut ties with the rebels, but now he rekindles his old feelings. It's really unwise. Xia Jiang was disgusted by the other party's seemingly concerned tone. So what? So, I hope that the captain will go all out to capture the wanted criminal from this moment on to atone for his sins. I've been lying in nirvana for the past few days and couldn't take care of what's happening outside. I didn't expect that when I came out, that person could already eat mixed stew in Chiangsaen district with a swagger. Heh. Xia Jiang sneered. Captain, no matter how unfair your superiors are to you, it is Chiangsaen security that pays you and provides you with a dormitory these years. These elite soldiers and generals around you were transferred to your squadron through the channels of the Security Bureau. Thinking of the group of laser-brained idiots under his command, Xia Jiang sneered. Thank you so much. Xia Zi said, no need to thank you. Please use your due ability to catch the people as soon as possible to clear your innocence. Xia Jiang asked, you worked so hard to plan, just to force me to take action? The plain man did not hide it. Yes, I like to watch the rebels kill each other the most. After that, there was a burst of gum-souring laughter. At the same time, on the other side, in the abandoned warehouse group in Xianhuang district, the young Jedi apprentice was hanging in the shadow of the metal building with the sling hidden in his bracelet. Seeing the energy beams around him intertwined like a storm, screams and roars came one after another. I just felt that all this was a little unreal. After traveling with his master for many years, he had never seen such a strange ambush. Objectively speaking, the timing of the ambush was very well designed. It happened to be when Scene was fully focused on saving people and had no other thoughts. The ambush location was an abandoned warehouse in the middle of nowhere, which was a desperate situation. The ambush soldiers were also truly elite. The special forces of Chiangsaen security were one of the most powerful armed forces in the galaxy, and their individual combat capabilities were undoubtedly top-notch. So when Scene resolutely rushed out of the warehouse, he was even prepared to be defeated, captured, or even killed in battle. However, after rushing out of the warehouse, he saw that the dragnet outside was actually killing each other, and the intensity was so strong that it seemed as if the special forces had an irreconcilable hatred with each other. So that Scene, the object of the ambush, was ignored for a while. The abnormal situation made the young Jedi apprentice quite suspicious. But the opportunity was not to be missed, and the doubts in his heart did not affect Scene's judgment at all. He took advantage of the fierce battles around him, shook his body vigorously, and climbed to the edge of a tall warehouse with the swing of the sling, and then leaped all the way up to the roof. From this overlooking the battlefield, what you see is even more shocking. The infighting and chaos of the special forces are not just internal strife in the general sense, but clearly an organized massacre. Under the command of a small team leader, several core members methodically suppressed the scattered soldiers around with firepower, but the scattered soldiers seemed panicked and disorganized, and could hardly form an effective resistance. In addition, on a relatively hidden commanding height, there lay a corpse with his eyes open. The person's armor was luxurious and exquisite, and he seemed to be a senior figure in the special forces. He was dressed so high profile on the front battlefield, which seemed to confirm that he had full confidence in his team. However, on the back of the corpse, there was a dark burnt hole. It was a fatal wound from someone around him. Chapter 148 Not Revenge. The chaos at the scene was still traceable. Obviously, the most trusted confidant of the dead captain took advantage of the special forces scattered and ambushed, and suddenly took action. to kill people and seize power, and then launched a bloody suppression of the opposition, which formed a strange situation in the ambush circle. Sin quickly sorted out his thoughts in his mind, and for a moment he felt that reality was even more absurd than fiction. The elite troops of Kyankan security would openly rebel on their own territory. Is there any order in this galaxy? It is incredible that Kyankan group has been able to maintain peace and stability for thousands of years with such a security team. Sin hid in the shadows and sneaked out of the warehouse area while silently feeling the flow of the force. The Jedi apprentice felt as if he was driving a light boat in a rushing river, drifting with the current. Everything he saw along the way was just the great force showing its power. The waves surging on the river were just appearances, and there were unspeakable undercurrents rushing under the water. It was these undercurrents that guided him to turn the tables in desperate situations and continue to move forward. But soon, Sin felt that his connection with the force became elusive again, not to mention the undercurrents under the water. Even the waves became blurred. After all, he was not a Jedi master, and there was no way to feel the will of the force all the time. However, the Jedi apprentice had long been accustomed to this sudden stop. He had not been known for his talent since he was a young apprentice. In fact, when Mostima was teaching Sin, he often asked him to complete various tasks without using force skills. This way of education is different from the tradition of the Jedi, but Mostima once told Sin that there is not only one way to the force, and occasionally taking a long detour will only make the road behind smoother. And now, what Sin has to do is to use the limited resources in his hands to complete the task, just like the past trials. He forced himself to think about everything in the present rationally, and the first thing was to throw away unnecessary optimism, such as the force would guide him to be invincible. A mere apprentice did not have that kind of advantage, and even a Jedi master could hardly do it. He wanted to try to think about the problem from a different angle. The internal strife of Kyankan security was an objective fact, but Sin did not believe that there was such a cheap good thing in the world. At least he could not accept the reality with peace of mind. Instead of blindly optimistic, it is better to be pessimistic and make the worst plan. If all this is a trap to confuse the opponent, although no matter how you think about it, the cost of this scam is too high to clean up, but it is not without its reasonable side. The ambush of the special forces alone cannot perfectly trap the Jedi apprentice. The terrain of this abandoned warehouse area is complex, providing too many natural shelters, which greatly limits the firepower advantage of the special forces, and the complex ecological environment composed of a large number of homeless people and gang members here also gives the Jedi apprentice enough space to fish in troubled waters. In addition, the special forces may not enter the scene in advance in order to avoid disturbing Sin. The large force hurriedly chased after Sin and set up an encirclement after he drove over, so there are not a few flaws in the formation. With Sin's skills, the success rate of a forced breakout is low, but it is still about 20% to 30%. And if the opponent is greedy enough and is not satisfied with a 70% to 80% chance of winning, then sacrificing a special forces team to create a more secure killing situation seems to make sense. At least with the style of Zazie, the madman, this perverted design can be fully explained. Thinking of that flat face and the piercing laughter, Sin felt a headache. It was a pity that he didn't have time to give Zazie the last blow when the giant camel crashed. At the same time, Sin's heart also ignited a stronger fighting spirit. If all this is a conspiracy, in fact, since the appearance of the special forces, all this has been clearly a conspiracy, then whether it is Lei Yangtze's death or Wang Yi's death, it is obvious that the mastermind behind the conspiracy should be blamed. Recalling Wang Yi's optimistic and gentle smile, and his smile as he died, Sin only felt that the pain deep in his heart had reached a point where he could not suppress it. He no longer wanted to leave this space city. If he can't make that perverted killer pay the price, Sin will never be able to sleep well in the future, even if he can escape from Lee. At this moment, it is difficult for him to distinguish between light and darkness. Revenge is undoubtedly against the way of the Jedi, but is letting Zazie go the way of the Jedi? He would rather do something wrong than abide by the doctrine for the sake of abiding by the doctrine. However, it is not easy to avenge Wang Yi. The Jedi apprentices now can't even protect themselves. While Sin quietly walked in the shadows, He recalled the three-dimensional map of Lee in his mind and looked for a reasonable path to travel. Xianhuang District 3 is remote and has limited access to the outside world. Considering that the special forces have already penetrated into the warehouse area, the ambush network is likely to have been fully deployed, so the main traffic routes should also be heavily guarded. Especially in District 4, which borders District 3, there is a small port for civilians to use, which can take off and land small spacecraft. According to Wang Yi's casual chat, District 4 has always been the main smuggling and illegal crossing route in Xianhuang District. Therefore, the direction to District 4 was marked as a no-go in Sin's mind. In addition, there is Xianhuang District 5 bordering District 3. It is the most active gang paradise in Space City since the decline of Xiangsu and District 9. Many low-level militants and even wanted criminals in the galaxy live there. It is said to be a chaotic area with constant gunfire every day. From the perspective of escape, the chaotic area is suitable for fishing in troubled waters, but if the gangs there have been prepared, then an outsider rushing in will be simply walking into a trap. In the end, there was only one feasible path left on the map. As Sin thought more deeply, the path in his mind gradually became clear, and finally even became dazzling. Sin quickly made a judgment. He would return to Xianhuang District 1 along the original route, and then return to Xiangsuan, upstream, to Xiangsuan Udang. He was going to meet the owner of Xiangsuan District, Mr. Zhang. In Li, a place where he was unfamiliar with the world, it would be difficult for a Jedi apprentice to make any choice alone. Rather than trying your luck blindly, it is better to find a suitable guide. Just as Wang Yi opened the secret passage to Food is Heaven, foreseen in Xiangsuan District 9, Mr. Zhang, as the executive of the entire space city, will certainly be able to open the passage to Zun, foreseen. And the way to revenge the real culprit behind the scenes. Chapter 149 Entering the play. When Sin quietly left the warehouse area, the civil war in the special forces was still going on. The elite fighters were really angry. The rebellious party and the reorganized orthodox faction fought fiercely, so that Sin finally walked away from their sight almost swaggeringly, and his superb skills of disguise and stealth were completely useless. When he came to the outside of the warehouse area, Sin was somewhat surprised to find that the atmosphere was normal. The street vendors were still shouting weakly, the passers-by only looked down at the road and walked in a hurry, and a few naughty children were walking among the crowd, chasing a broken toy robot. The fierce battle of the special forces seemed to take place in another world, although the tragic gunfire was still faintly heard. But the people in District 3 were unaware of it and continued their own rhythm in an orderly manner. Is this kind of tolerance considered a special folk custom in Xianhuang District? Sin was a little confused and planned to find a street vendor to find out the situation. However, just as he had the idea, he heard a commotion in the distance. He saw a group of armed men violently driving the crowd on the street and coming aggressively. Sin was startled and hurriedly followed the crowd around him to avoid them. However, he saw that the group of armed men were not coming for him, but rushed into a bar, dragged out a drunken strong man, beat him up, and kicked him to wake him up, and then stuffed a red metal token into his arms. The strong man was beaten up for no reason. He was furious. He was bleeding from his nose and shouting for revenge. However, when he saw the red token, his face suddenly became stern, and he even sobered up. The next moment, he hurriedly got up, waved his hand to stop the men who chased him out of the bar, and then even nodded and thanked those who beat him. The more Sin looked at it, the more he felt that it was unreasonable, but vaguely, he felt that it had its own internal logic. Unfortunately, before he could think about it, he saw people around him constantly casting strange glances at him, as if admiring rare animals. Sin immediately realized that he might have exposed his identity somewhere, and hurriedly took advantage of the fact that before more people paid attention to him, he mixed in the crowd again and walked quickly towards District 1. Along the way, similar anomalies emerged in an endless stream, and the armed element from all walks of life became particularly active, but the active objects were not seen, an outsider, but the people of Xianhuang District. Many ruffians were roughly pulled out by the armed men, stuffed with red tokens, and then became honest and well behaved. Some gathering points built by low-level refugees in abandoned public facilities were violently demolished and restored to their original appearance. What's more, SYN even saw the armed element collecting illegal firearms circulating among the people in an orderly manner. Logically speaking, this should be the norm in Cheyenne district. The city's public security is not maintained by Kayankan security, but by local corporate organizations and gangs recruiting personnel on their own, and then governing according to the laws set by the city council. Therefore, punishing civilian crimes and maintaining public facilities are theoretically the daily work of civilian armed forces. However, theory is theory, and only in the prosperous Cheyenne district can these public affairs be well maintained. As for Cheyenne district, it can be seen from the dilapidated street scene. Therefore, the activeness of the armed element in Cheyenne district at this time is really inconsistent, and as far as SYN can see, the armed element are not so much encircling and suppressing fugitives as actively clearing the area to welcome the arrival of a big man. SYN had seen similar things when he traveled with his master in the past. When the local ruler heard that the Jedi master and apprentice were coming, he ordered his men to decorate the area under his jurisdiction with a big fanfare to welcome the arrival of the master. So, is there some big shot coming? The situation seems to be getting better. SYN muttered to himself, and he had already arrived at the border between Cheyenne district and Cheyenne district without any danger. Along the way, everything was as expected. Although the armed element in Cheyenne district were highly active, they cleared the area while strictly blocking the passages to many areas, turning Cheyenne district into a cage, isolated from the inside and outside. However, the road to Cheyenne district became a blind spot. Half of it was because the armed element in Cheyenne district focused their main energy on clearing the area and obviously did not care much about the fugitives. Especially they did not expect the fugitives to think in reverse and choose to flee to Cheyenne district. The other half was that there was an obvious gap between Cheyenne district and Cheyenne district, so that the armed personnel were obviously unwilling to approach Cheyenne district. In Cheyenne district, although there were boundaries between the various districts, they were not strict, and many armed element of gang organizations were enforcing the law across districts. But Cheyenne district was like a forbidden area. Once the armed personnel in Cheyenne district approached the border, they would attract high alert from the armed personnel on the other side. Those bodyguards hired by the Cheyenne district companies would not hesitate to raise their guns and aim at their counterparts in the Cheyenne district. In this case, let alone working together to block the fugitives, even approaching each other would cause a serious crisis. Now, SYN is at the scene of the crisis. In front of him is a wide street connecting the Cheyenne district and the Cheyenne district. The other end of the street is brightly lit, as if it is still immersed in the daytime brought by Boozle. The other end is dim, and it has entered the night early. Standing in the night, SYN can clearly see the tension on both sides of the street. I saw hundreds of blasters densely set up in the buildings on both sides of the road, and the muzzles of the guns on both sides are facing each other, and a terrifying murderous intent permeates the street. SYN has no doubt that, as long as anyone on either side accidentally fires a gun, a fierce civil war will immediately start. So, if I disguise myself as someone from one side and shoot, no one will care about me anymore, right? SYN hid in the dark and observed the situation on the scene. He couldn't help but think of a way to break out, so he chuckled. But the laughter stopped abruptly. What am I thinking? Am I too immersed in the role of that perverted murderer? Chapter 150 Opportunity. SYN knew very well that he was just slightly out of control and had evil thoughts. His rationality and character were definitely not like that. However, once the evil thoughts came, they lingered. Looking at the armed element hiding behind the building, SYN's fingers always touched the handle of the gun on his waist. As long as he fired a shot and caused a war on the border between the two districts, his future would undoubtedly be easier. Although there would inevitably be casualties. But but if we weigh the pros and cons rationally, it is not difficult to conclude that it is better to cause a war here in advance than to be stopped by armed personnel halfway. By then, in order to break through, SYN may not have the opportunity to show mercy, and the fierce battle will also cause tragic casualties, and it will inevitably delay the main business. The pros and cons are clear at a glance. Being soft-hearted here is tantamount to ignoring the interests of the overall situation in order to satisfy one's own sense of morality. If it was the flat-faced man, he would never have any concerns when he took action. And there is no doubt that the means of the perverted killer are always particularly effective, which the young apprentice has already experienced. While thinking, SYN's gun had unconsciously aimed at a mercenary from the Xiangsuan district. Compared with the tense nerves on the Xianhuang district side, the mercenaries in the Xiangsuan district, although they were numerous and well equipped, were obviously a little slack, as if waiting for someone to remind them of the cruelty of war. Next, as long as SYN gently pulled the trigger, the road to the Xiangsuan district would be opened. However, at this moment, a riot suddenly broke out on the Xiangsuan district side. The mercenaries seemed to have heard some incredible news, and they put down their guns one after another, showing expressions of surprise and relief. But soon they quickly evacuated the border under the command of several leaders. After the mercenaries from the Xiangsuan district left the scene, the Xianhuang district immediately booed, but after mocking the opponent who fled without a fight, the militants in the Xianhuang district also breathed a sigh of relief. It is better not to fight if you can. Just when people were relaxed, SYN also exhaled lightly, put away his pistol, and then found the floor in the crowd sight, quietly crossed the border of the two districts along one side of the street, and stepped onto the land of Xiangsuan district. Interestingly, after passing the border of Zhuanhuang district, the sight suddenly became clear. The majestic and magnificent figure of Xiangsuan Yudong was clearly visible under the light, like an emperor reigning over Xiangsuan, overlooking the common people. From the border of Xiangsuan district to Xiangsuan Yudong, it was a long and dangerous road. Bathed in the prosperous lights of Xiangsuan district again, SYN had clearly felt that the atmosphere here had also changed. Similar to Xianhuang district, a large number of armed mercenaries began to take to the streets to maintain order in the area, or to demarcate restricted areas, drive away pedestrians around, or to close some noisy public facilities. Because of the prosperity and civilization of Xiangsuan district, everything seemed to be in good order, far less noisy than Xianhuang district. But if you look closely, the chaos is still clear at a glance. SYN carefully observed the street scene and couldn't help but whisper to himself, orderliness is only an appearance. These well-dressed upper-class people in Xiangsuan district will also panic, bewilderment and even hysteria when facing emergencies. A young couple on the street passed by a mercenary with heavy firepower. The young man saw the flamethrower behind the mercenary, his face turned pale, and he couldn't stand steadily, while the older woman, who was like a sister, held his hand tightly and comforted him gently, even though the woman herself couldn't help shaking. A gray-haired old man was waving his crutches randomly and arguing with a fully armored mercenary, but the latter just pushed the shield hard and pushed the old man to the side of the road until he staggered out of the designated restricted area. The old man cursed for a while, and seeing that the mercenaries had no intention of respecting the elderly and loving the young, he could only spit and leave in anger. In addition, there were a few irrational people who kept entangled with the mercenaries, but the Yangbing and Xiangsuan district were experienced in dealing with them, and were very good at using electric shock devices and hard shields to calm the troublemakers down in the first place. Because there were enough armed personnel on the streets, some chaos was quickly suppressed. Just from what SYN saw in the border area, there were almost more armed mercenaries on the streets than civilians. As the core and prosperous area of the space city, the rich heritage of Xiangsuan district was undoubtedly revealed at this moment. They also relied on mercenaries affiliated with private institutions to maintain order, but the mercenaries in Xiangsuan district were far from comparable to their downtrodden counterparts in Xianhuang district in terms of quantity and quality. In comparison, even the official forces such as Kyankan security seemed shabby, but in essence, it's still a mob. SYN observed for a while and made a rough judgment. Although there were many mercenaries on the street, they were obviously doing their own thing, and there was no tacit understanding at all. When the two teams of mercenaries met on the street, most of them nodded and lowered their guns, using extremely cautious attitudes to ensure that they were safe from each other. However, there were obvious grudges between a few mercenary teams. When they passed each other, they would hit each other's shoulders hard and put on a grinning posture, as if a war was about to break out. Scene observed for a while and felt more and more difficult. These mobs were full of flaws, but because there were too many flaws, they were always nervous, fearing that they would be secretly shot by some enemies or unruly people. In this case, a lone traveler who went against the flow all the way would be particularly eye-catching, no matter how he covered his tracks. Besides, Scene had no time to cover up and take his time. The changes in the warehouse area could not be concealed for long. Scene had no doubt that the mastermind behind the scenes would frame the death of the captain on his head, and then he would face an unprecedented city-wide wanted order. Just when Scene felt more and more difficult, a turning point came suddenly. A team of well-equipped civilian mercenaries stopped on patrol, and the leading captain received unexpected instructions from the head-mounted communicator. What? Let us transfer people to Shiangsa New Dong now? Forget it, we are short of manpower here. I know that Class A and above troops are obliged to be called up in times of emergency, but is it really necessary to call us up? Aren't the two special forces teams at Shiangsa New Dong enough for the parliament to dispatch? Do they want security or pomp? TSK, I know, I won't waste my words. I will send people over now, okay? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.